we ready? I know. I just said. I'm sorry to see him go. He always takes. He's excellent. Big part. He's involved with everything. He's here. I said hello to him before. It's funny because whenever I need anything, I pick up the phone. Yeah. I think it's fine. Clean sweep. Saturday.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to June 1st, 2015, public meeting. Roll call.
Councilman O'Toole.
Present.
Councilman Tinella.
Here.
Councilman Zuna. Deputy Mayor Chisolo.
Here.
Mayor Longo.
Here. Please rise for the invocation. To be given by Father Matt.
Just before I begin, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like to just say thank you to all of you for your support, as well as for the town. Support of the carnival this past weekend, great success, and it's only possible with everyone's help. And as most of you have heard, I'll be transferring to Seton Hall, so I decided to take from their motto the inspiration for my prayer this evening, which is hazard zet forward. And so let us take a moment then to recognize the presence in the midst of God, the God of the universe, and His infinite wisdom. Dear Lord, you provide for us far beyond what we can imagine and sustain us even when we feel unworthy. We give you thanks for all that you've given us and find ourselves completely lacking, yet for your generosity. We ask for the courage to trust in your wisdom and ask you to guide us that we may follow your ways even amongst the dangers and struggles we see. We ask for your continued safety and peace in our town and our country, and ask you to look after those who look after us, especially the members of our military services, as well as our local police, fire, and emergency medical services. Continue to look with favor upon our town of Cedar Grove, especially those gathered this evening and our elected council, who will help to lead us in living peace and harmony. Allow for criticisms and discussions to always be pointed only towards the good of all, not allowing hurt feelings to cause any pain. Assist us in all that we do, so that everything we accomplish may be directed by your wisdom and assisted with your grace, and find its completion happily in your hands, where you care for all of us. For we ask this in your most holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Please remain standing for the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Father Mack, and I appreciate all the service you've given to Cedar Grove.
Thank you, Father Matt. You will certainly be missed. Okay, open public meeting statement. Adequate notice of this meeting was duly provided to the Verona Cedar Grove Times and the Star Ledger by email and published in an annual schedule of meetings January 1st, 2015. Filed with the Township Clerk and posted on the public bulletin board in the municipal building lobby in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act. Item 2, extraordinary business of the Township Council. 2A. All right. If no one objects on the council, I'd like to have reports of township official by Bob O'Toole.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This is, we're a little bit off the agenda, but the reason I do this is because I wanted to make this statement. I wanted to read this statement. And as this is my last public council meeting, please indulge me while I reminisce a brief summary of things past. This is a bittersweet memory for me.
We could hardly hear you.
I don't think these mics are. I don't think they're loud enough, okay. I have stated before that in life, all times come to an end. It is now time for my council seat and mayor seat to come to an end on July 1st, 2015, after 12 years. I have served always with the residents' welfare in mind. As an example, always monitoring page by page the township budget and recommending further cuts. Encourage the council to eliminate the stipends that we used to receive and the yearly conferences to Atlantic City because money was tight. I encouraged the construction of Panther Park. I was able to obtain the Passaic County Sewer Commission to eliminate any blockage flows in the Peckman River. These, along with many other items, working with the council to make the residents proud of the Township of Cedar Grove. I've been very fortunate in life. I was raised by my mother and 3 sisters after my father abandoned us. We lived many places. I attended 10 schools in 12 years, working full-time since I was 14 years old to help the family. I enlisted twice in the United States Army, serving 2 deployments plus extensions in Korea, totaling over 3 years, meeting my wife, Young Oak, while I was there. The Army discouraged our marriage, but with persistence, we succeeded after a lengthy investigation of both of our backgrounds by the CID. Later employed in printing, running large 4-color presses for 27 years until the company went bankrupt and lost my pension. Then able to obtain employment with a Fortune 500 paper manufacturer, Westvaco Corporation, serving as regional manager before retiring at 69 when they merged with the Mead paper. Retirement was not satisfying, so I was then able to become a general manager of Amsco Wire Products until the absentee owner asked me to close the business and auction off all the equipment, so retirement again came at 79. During all this time, I served 45 years with the Cedar Grove Fire Department, fireman, lieutenant, captain, deputy chief, also managing Cedar Grove Little League Baseball and flag football and other youth activities such as Cub Master, chairman of St. Catherine's Carnival, along with my wife and I as cleanup crew from the first carnival until last year. The reason I'm telling you all this, as you can see above, come to an end. Everything comes to an end at some point. And I am now ending the representation of our residents of Cedar Grove. It, as has all the above, been an enjoyable part of my life. My wife and our family go on to another part of our lives when we hopefully can finalize my wife's and our official church wedding, since we only signed bilingual papers in 1957 with the American Embassy and the Korean Mayor of Seoul, plus the Family Register Bureau. Thank you to the voters that had faith in me, and a special thank you to Mr. Tucci, Mr. Homa, for all their assistance in keeping Cedar Grove with the lowest possible municipal tax rate in Essex County. Thank you to Mr. Scrivo, Mrs. Stutz, Mrs. LaCapra, for all their advice and assistance throughout the years. Thank you to the employees and the fellow council members of Cedar Grove for making this township the best-kept secret in Essex County. Last, but by no means least, a big thank you to my wife, Young Oak, and all my children for supporting me, especially Kevin and Eileen, whose skills, when they were on the council, I tried to emulate. Realizing years ago that even though I worked 2, 3, and sometimes 4 jobs, I could not give them everything I should and wanted to give except the full love in my heart. Love you all, and love the Township of Cedar Grove. As I retire from the township as mayor and as previous mayor and council, I leave my record as the oldest mayor and council member to be broken whenever that might happen. Thank you, Lord, for making all this possible, and I may wish you all that the wind be always at your back, and may the good Lord hold you all in the palm of his hands. Thank you.
right. Extraordinary business of the Township Council. I'd like to receive Senator Kevin O'Toole.
Good evening. When we asked to come here a couple of months ago, didn't know it'd be as weighty a night on the agenda, so I'll try to keep it quick, but I'm here for a very specific reason, is to thank my father for serving the 12 years as a council member. I come here as a state senator, I come here more as a son, I come as a former council member, a mayor, a resident for the last 50 years, and as I was walking over here today, first of all, I didn't know you didn't have a legitimate wedding, so I'm a little bit worried about that one. That's news to us. But I came over here knowing this is his last council meeting and didn't want to disrupt the activities on July 1st. And I said, how can you really sum up a man's life with just a proclamation or a couple of simple words? And I can't do justice for what he, as an individual who picked Cedar Grove in 1960 with my mother and said, this is the community we want. This is where we want to grow up and raise our 7 kids and raise the majority of our grandchildren here, the community that he's put his life in. And so it's a little bit bittersweet to be here when he says it's time to turn the page and move on. And I can't do justice for all the activities he's done. You know, I served in a fire department with him. I was his Little League student. Which is not always the easiest thing to be, have your father as your coach. I would tell those in the future, yeah, be cautious about that. On the fire department, football, baseball, you name it, he's done it. Carnival. He's does things, he doesn't want credit. He's embarrassed I'm here right now talking about him. But I think there's people that are the pillars of the community, like my father, that deserve a little special recognition after 80-some years, 55 years of public service in this community. Now, everyone's here for other reasons, to talk about what's going on in the community. I'm here to talk about him. And I appreciate the extra minutes you're giving me to salute one of our true heroes and pillars who has made Cedar Grove so wonderfully great. And Dad, as your son, I can't do justice for what you've done. I thank you for the incredible life you've given all of us, all of your children, your wife, grandchildren, and all the residents, the kids I grew up with. We graduated high school here in '82, and all the kids who have remained here. So on behalf of, and Joe, if you can bring up, we have 2 very small proclamations. The first one is on behalf of the Senate and the General Assembly. That, and I'm not going to read it, just want to recognize the incredible sacrifice and commitment and public service that my dad has given. And Dad, if you can just come up here and accept this on behalf of the State Senate and the Assembly, and we thank you for your service. And the last one is a special proclamation, and it's, I'm going to read this one. Dear Councilman O'Toole, on behalf of the State of New Jersey, I am pleased to extend best wishes to you as you celebrate your retirement from the Cedar Grove Town Council. Throughout your storied career, you have demonstrated a tireless commitment to serving your fellow residents and our state, from your time in Cedar Grove's Volunteer Fire Department to your leadership on the Township Council. I understand that even after your retirement, you plan to remain involved in public matters in Cedar Grove. Well, there couldn't be a truer statement than that. If you don't think he's going to be involved, then you don't know my father. And I am confident that New Jersey's residents will continue to benefit from your expertise and insight. New Jerseyans are fortunate to benefit from residents like you, who make our state stronger, a better place. And I join with your family, friends, and colleagues in applauding a job well done. Best wishes, good health, happiness, and success in all your endeavors, Governor Christopher Christie. And he signed this, I did not make him say this. He goes, thanks for your help and the help of your wonderful son. Congratulations.
Thank you, Senator.
I just want to say, whatever I've done in town couldn't have been without other people helping me. It wasn't just me. Believe me, there's a lot of people in this town that volunteer day in and day out. The council is a volunteer organization. All the boards are volunteer organizations. This is the most wonderful town I've ever seen in my life. Thank you.
Thank you. If no one on the council mind, I'd like to just rearrange the agenda. Because we have a full house tonight, I want to give everybody the opportunity to speak their mind and not have anything hanging over us. So, I'll go directly to item 3, public hearing.
Mayor, 3A, we're going to move to the bottom of the agenda. That's particularly dealing with the K. Hovnanian.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to item 3B. To consider adoption of pending ordinance 15781, sewer utility improvements.
A bond ordinance authorizing various sewer utility improvements for the Township of Cedar Grove in the County of Essex, appropriating $120,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $114,000 of bonds or notes to finance part of the costs thereof.
Mayor, I move for the adoption of pending ordinance 15781 to be published in the Verona Cedar Grove Times as a past ordinance.
Public hearing.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, we'd like to, anybody has any questions or comments about this ordinance? Please indicate. Yes.
Mayor, just if I could jump in, this only deals with this ordinance and this ordinance only.
Yes. To consider resolution for ordinance 15781, sewer utility. Yes, Mr. Emmerich.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for your efforts to advertise this special meeting. I want to be sure that I'm speaking on the right item.
Sewer utility.
The attorney mentioned a particular ordinance, and I'm speaking about the Hilltop ordinance.
No.
Mr.
No.
Emmerich.
Okay,
Mr. Emmerich, this is a sewer utility. We're going to handle the Hilltop issue at the end of the meeting.
okay. I wanted to get that clear. I understood there was a conflict.
Anybody else have any comment? Seeing none, I close
Mayor,
that
I move for the
portion.
adoption of ordinance 15780 to be published in the Verona Cedar Grove. 781 to be published in the Verona Cedar Grove Times as a passed ordinance to take effect as prescribed by law.
Second, Mayor.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Toole?
Aye.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Councilman Zunic? Deputy Mayor Chesolo?
Yes.
Mayor Longo?
Yes. Item 3C to consider adoption of pending ordinance 15782, water utility improvements.
A bond ordinance authorizing various water utility improvements in and for the Township of Cedar Grove in the County of Essex, New Jersey, appropriating $160,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $152,000 of bonds or notes to finance part of the cost thereof.
Gotta open it up.
Open it up.
Is anyone, at this point, we'll open up the meeting. Any comments on this particular agenda item only? Seeing none, we close that portion.
Mayor, I move for the adoption of pending bond ordinance 15-781 to be published, 782, right? Yeah. 782. To be published in the Verona Cedar Grove Times as a passed ordinance to take effect as prescribed by law.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Toole?
Aye.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Councilman Zunic?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Chesolo?
Yes.
Mayor Longo?
Yes, item 3D. Consider adoption of pending ordinance 15783, various general improvements.
Bond ordinance authorizing various general improvements in and for the Township of Cedar Grove in the County of Essex, New Jersey, appropriating $600,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $570,000 bonds or notes to finance the part of the cost thereof.
At this point, we open up the meeting to this agenda item only. Seeing none, we close that portion.
Mayor, I move for the adoption of pending bond ordinance number 15-783 to be published in the Verona Cedar Grove Times as a passed ordinance to take effect as prescribed by law.
Second, Mayor.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Councilman O'Toole.
Aye.
Councilman Tinello.
Yes.
Councilman Zunic.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Chisolo.
Yes.
Mayor Longo.
Yes.
Mayor, before we move on, just so the public is clear, we will be speaking about the Hilltop issue, which is agenda item 3A, I believe.
Yes.
In a few minutes. We're trying to do our normal agenda because we realize and we're cognizant of the fact that all of you are here tonight for that reason. So we want to be respectful and get to that portion in a few minutes, so just bear with us.
Okay. Item 4. The meeting is open to residents of the township wishing to be heard on any items on the agenda.
And Mayor, just to clarify, this would relate to any item on the agenda except the Hilltop issue. So anything else that's on the agenda that anyone wants to address.
All right.
Yes.
See? Yes.
It is.
Mayor and Council, my name is John Kiaya. I'm an attorney at law. I represent your solid waste hauler, and they also collect the leaves. They have a contract with the town. The contract provides for them to stay in town for a certain term, and they publicly bid for that right, and they won that by being the lowest responsible bidder when they bid. They've been serving the town for over 6 years, and everybody that I've spoken to says their service is excellent. And recently, and I don't want to belabor things here, and I'll answer any questions if there are any questions, but recently there was a new hauler brought into town, sort of abruptly, and to the surprise of my client. Now, my client is owned by two individuals. They both carry cell phones, and they are very proud of their service, and they make themselves available to their customers. They tell me they never got any phone calls. There was one letter on, I think, the 20th of May, and then 2 days later, there was another hauler. I don't feel they were given any due process. They were not given a hearing, not given an opportunity to meet with any of the governing body or the administration. And they would like very much to have their contract and avoid a litigation with the town for breach of contract. They have never missed a day. They are here every single pickup day they're supposed to be here. And I'm sorry to say, I don't know how many residents you have in town, but there's probably thousands. And I would imagine a couple of missed stops, which are faxed to my client's office on a daily basis, which he gets the very next day, should not be a basis for him to be declared as if he didn't show up or he doesn't do the service. And just so you know, it would be a great hardship to him if this in fact passed tonight, because his bond would be called in. And that would be a great financial penalty to him and his reputation. So I ask you to not rush to a judgment tonight. Let us have an opportunity to talk to your proper officials, to find out where the breakdown in communication may be, and give us an opportunity to finish the term of our contract. You don't have to make a decision tonight. You certainly can give us an opportunity to talk.
Mayor, just for purposes of the governing body's edification, item number 6I this evening, the governing body is considering to authorize the emergency contract with Suburban Disposal to replace our previous waste hauler, Joseph Smetkowski. I'll let the manager go into any details with respect to this, but I understand, based on what council says, that this may be a litigation matter, so we'll be somewhat cautious but also informative to the residents with regard to what occurred, at least procedurally. As I said, the manager would likely address the prior infractions that the prior waste hauler that the town had encountered with the prior waste hauler. Sometime in mid-May, after numerous complaints, we had written to counsel for the waste hauler at that counsel's request, informing them that the contract would terminate as of a date specific. When there was no response from the waste hauler in that intervening time, and that was May 22nd letter, by May 28th, The contract expired on its own terms and was terminated by the township as a result of breach of contract. A new waste hauler was given an emergency contract by the township manager to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the town, as well as collect the garbage that was not being collected. And the ratification of that action, which had previously been polled by the manager to the council members, as you are aware, is on this evening for ratification, and that's item 6I. It was the opinion of the township attorney that the actions in terminating the contract and in bringing the successor waste haul vendor was adequate under the contract and was appropriate under the circumstances. As to the specific complaints that predated this, I would let the manager go into that, as well as the communications that the manager had attempted to conduct with the prior waste with Mr. Kiai's client.
Thank you. Just to follow up, just to give you a little background on this, this was a contract awarded to Joseph Schmentowski. It was awarded on April the 5th by the governing body, and it went into effect January 1, 2014. It was for a 5-year term. The cost of the 5-year term was $1,909,530, and that was for a twice-per-week collection with bulk being collected on Wednesdays. We had a separate grass contract with a different hauler, a subsidiary of Schmentowski, which went into effect on September 10th, 2012. The complaints from the residents are such that we could no longer withstand the non-collection. And here are just some of the complaints. No pickups in entire collection zones on certain days, partial pickup of solid waste in some areas. The grass collection, which was supposed to be done by a separate company, the grass was being thrown into the solid waste, which we hired a separate company to do separate collection because grass is not supposed to be in the solid waste stream. So we're paying for a separate truck for grass, and yet our solid waste hauler is picking it up. We had sections of town over the past month where we had 3 bulk pickups on Wednesdays where no bulk collection was picked up. Matter of fact, the residents, quite irritated, and I don't blame them, had to bring the bulk back in one day, bring it back out the next Wednesday, bring it back in, 3 consecutive Wednesdays, and that bulk was never picked up. The pickup, according to the contract and bid specifications, are supposed to be on certain days and within certain hours. Some days the collection would never happen, and they would pick up on the days whenever they felt like it. As far as the township issues, like I said, some days we had no pickups, some days we had partial pickups. The pickups were not going according to schedule, which is very confusing for residents because we have solid waste collection, we have grass clipping collection, we have bulk collection, and it's very vital that the information we're giving out to our residents is accurate because it's frustrating. People are putting their material out and it's not getting picked up. The big issue that we had was in trying to correct all this. Over the past 3 weeks, we've been trying to contact the contact information people from the company. No one picks up the phone. My secretary has documented over 3 weeks all the missed pickups and phone calls and with no correction. As a matter of fact, in some instances, we had to have the Public Works Department go out over the last few days and do some of these collections and store the solid waste in a temporary location until somebody else came and pick it up. In addition, the other breach of contract is we've received calls from the Essex County Utilities Authority, who monitors the solid waste disposal at the incinerator because the contractor is supposed to keep a minimum balance on tap there so that our solid waste is paid for. That's the garbage that they dump there. And those balances went into negative balance. We were notified. Money gets put in the account, and the following week, we're back in the negative balance again. The other thing is solid waste collection is supposed to be done within certain hours. We can't have solid waste being picked up at 8, 9 o'clock at night. It's just not conducive to a community like this. The residents of this town deserve the service that they bid for and they're paying for, and the bottom line is we're not receiving it. If the council wants, I can go into every complaint here that we have documented, which was mailed from our town attorney to the hauler to notify him of where the deficiencies were. But I respectfully disagree with the attorney that the phones have been open. There's been no phone contact for 3 weeks. We've been trying to contact. Normally what happens is, and this happens all the time, there are some missed pickups, and that's normal, and with the communications there. But when we have entire zones not being picked up, bulk pickup over weeks being on the curb, this is a health, safety, and to the benefit of the residents. We had to move on and do something to get this corrected, and that's why we took the action we did. I leave the rest of the town attorney to explain.
Mayor, if I may. Mr. Scrivo, is this something that you can convene a conference call with the attorney as well as our manager to kind of resolve, or is this something that we need to continue to hear tonight?
The manager, the engineer, myself are recommending action at 6I this evening to ratify the action that was taken previously with respect to getting an emergency waste hauler in here. So we believe that it is the first public meeting after the action was required to be taken, and we think you need to take that action tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, if I might, Deputy Mayor, through you, Mr. Scrivo, can we jump right to 6I then, right now, in the agenda while we're here, or should we wait?
It's up to that's a matter of up to the governing body.
Mayor, if there's no objection to you, we can move right to 6I and address this issue.
I have no objection. Anybody?
Mayor, I make a motion to consider, I make a motion to approve the authorization of the execution of the emergency contract.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Any discussion?
Mayor, can we respond to some of the allegations that were said that actually were incorrect, actually?
Mayor, for you, I'd rather not litigate this now. If there's going to be litigation, let there be litigation, but I don't think this is the appropriate forum. And being that there may be litigation, we shouldn't comment on it anyway. Am I correct?
My client came all the way out, and he didn't have an opportunity
I've
to
been here
speak.
since 2009. I know some of you have been also.
Mayor,
Excuse me.
2009. My name is Gary Giordano. I'm the owner of Joe Zubikowski Hauling. I'm sorry. I've been doing the town since 2009. We never had a problem all these years. We got never. Tom Tucci has my cell number because we spoke numerous times over the last 15 years, back and forth, that he calls me on my cell regularly. So he has my supervisor who's in town here every day's cell number who stops in.
Mayor, with all due respect, I
never got a phone call.
Excuse me. I concur with my colleague on the council. There's gonna be litigation. You can save your arguments for litigation. Right now, we have a motion and a second on
What you're
table
doing
right
here
now.
is unfair.
You can
You're
bring it
not
up to
even
the
giving me a
council
chance to speak, number
Mayor,
one.
with a
Number
motion,
two, you
Mayor,
don't know
and a
what the
second.
facts are. And number three, why do you want to waste all these people's time and money and dollars on court? Because that's where you're going to wind up in court with a special counsel, not even your in-house counsel, because you can't use him.
Mayor, with all
So
due
why do you
respect.
want to waste all that time and money?
Sir, I understand you're frustrated, but
It really is.
we're just following our procedures, okay? We've listened.
But you didn't
We've
follow the
got-
procedures correctly, sir.
Sir, I beg to differ. Please, don't challenge me on what
Okay,
procedures
no
are we
problem.
follow. I know them all too good. Okay? I'm not here to debate your issue. What I'm here to do is to make a decision based on the recommendations of our professionals. Our town manager runs the day-to-day operations of the town. He has the documentation. He has advised the council to move forward. Under our rules, we have a motion and a second. The only people that can comment on it are the council. If
see.
there is no council mayor, comment, then I would ask the mayor to call for a vote.
I agree, Mayor.
We have a second?
There was a second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Toole.
Aye.
Councilman Canelo.
Yes.
Councilman Zunick.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Chisolo.
Yes.
Mayor Longo.
Yes.
Next item on
Okay,
the
thank you.
It's too hot. It's sweating.
We did four, right?
Yes.
Okay. Item 5, reports of township officials. Township manager.
Yes, Mayor. First, I would want to congratulate Councilman O'Toole. Through the years, you've carried many titles here. You've been the mayor, you've been a councilman, been a fireman for almost 50 years. You've served on Little League, softball, you name it. But one thing I hold most dear is the title of friendship. And you've been my friend for many years, and I'm very proud of that. And I just want to wish you and your wife the best in your retirement, and hope to see you around town very often.
Thank you, Mr. Tucci, and the friendship, I hope, will continue.
Moving right along, in the packet, there's a memo addressed to me from Alex Palumbo, our township engineer. It's the recommendation for award of the preparation for the comprehensive township master plan and reexamination report. As you'll see in the memo, there are two proposals submitted. The recommendation from the township engineer is to go with Jason Kassler of Kassler Associates, Springfield, New Jersey, in the amount of $42,500. Want to know what the council's pleasure in that matter is?
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the engineer's recommendation.
We have a second?
All right, we'll put a resolution on for next meeting awarding contract.
Yeah.
That's okay with the council?
Yes.
And the next item I have is, I just want to announce that this Saturday, as we annually do, is our annual Clean Sweep program. Right now, I believe we have either 9 or 10 citizen groups that are participating, but I want to invite all other residents, anybody who wants to come as a single resident rather than a citizen group. Everyone's welcome. We're going to meet here on the steps of Town Hall at 9 o'clock, and then we'll assign various locations throughout the town so that we get the citizen participation in the cleanup. And that's all I have for this evening, Mayor.
Thank you. Tom, I just have one issue. 45 Monroe.
Yes. 45 Monroe, I believe there was a memo in the packet from the Township Attorney's Office regarding that issue. The issue was whether the property reverted back to the original property owner, if the township relinquished its rights to put a park there. And the determination was that it does revert back to the original property owner, who is the property owner who's selling the property to someone else. The only thing or action by the council is you have to relinquish your right to put the park there because there is a deed restriction. And once you do that, it'll revert back to the original owner and the sale of the property can go through.
All right, can I
The
have
township does not own or have any rights other than the deed restriction, which says that there can be a pocket park created there.
All right, do we have a motion?
Mayor, I make a motion that we put it on the agenda to transfer the ownership to the original, to the owner of the property.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Toole?
Aye.
Councilman Tinelli?
Yes.
Councilman Zunic?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Chisolo?
Yes.
Mayor Longo?
Yes. Reports to Township Clerk.
The only item I have, Mayor, is a reminder that tomorrow is primary election day, and the polls will be open from 6 a.m. until 8 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Township Attorney.
No report, Mayor.
Councilman O'Toole?
I gave my report, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
All I want to say is that I'll have more to say about Councilman O'Toole's tenure and friendship on July 1st.
Thank you. Councilman Tinella?
No report, Mayor.
Councilman Zunic?
Mayor, just one quick item. It is June 1st, July 1st is the reorganization meeting. Normally, we would have taken a straw poll by now for the positions of deputy mayor and deputy mayor in the upcoming year. So I would ask that we address that now, and I would make a motion to nominate Deputy Mayor Tizzolo to be mayor as of July 1st.
Do we have a second? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Toole?
Aye.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Councilman Zunic?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Chisolo?
Yes.
Mayor, if I might, on that same issue, I'll make a motion to nominate Councilman Zunic as deputy mayor.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Toole?
Aye.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Councilman Zunic?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Chisolo?
Yes.
Mayor Longo?
Yes. All right,
No other report, Mayor.
thank you. Item 6, new business. 6A, to consider introduction of pending ordinance 15784, 2015 salaries, grades, and ranges.
An ordinance fixing salary grades and ranges, wages and fees of the officers and employees of the Township of Cedar Grove for fiscal year 2015.
Have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Toole?
Aye.
Councilman Pinella?
Yes.
Councilman Zunick?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Chisolo?
Yes.
Mayor Longo?
Yes. Item 6B, to consider resolution concerning tax reduction granted by Tax Court of New Jersey.
Be it resolved that the required tax cancellations and refunds be made as listed herein.
Mayor, I make a motion, we approve the resolution.
Second, Mayor.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Toole?
Aye.
Councilman Pinella?
Yes.
Councilman Zunick?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Chisolo?
Yes.
Mayor Longo?
Yes. Item 6C, to consider resolution concerning purchase of sport utility vehicles through state contract.
Be it resolved that the purchase of sport utility vehicles be awarded to Weiner Ford through state contract A 82925.
Mayor, make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Toole?
Aye.
Councilman Pinella?
Yes.
Councilman Zunick?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Chisolo?
Yes.
Mayor Longo?
Yes. Item 6D, to consider resolution concerning estimated tax bills.
Be it resolved that the tax collector is hereby authorized and directed to prepare and issue estimated tax bills for the Township of Cedar Grove for the third installment of 2015 taxes.
So moved.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Toole?
Aye.
Councilman
Yes.
Pinella? Councilman Zunick?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Chisolo?
Yes.
Mayor Longo?
Yes, item 6E. To consider resolution concerning special item of revenue, Clean Communities Program.
Be it resolved by the township, that the Township Council hereby requests that the Director of the Division of Local Government Services approve the insertion of an item of revenue in the budget of the year 2015 in the sum of $23,520.02, which is now available as a revenue from the Clean Communities Program.
Mayor, I make a motion, we approve the resolution.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Toole?
Aye.
Councilman
Yes.
Pinella? Councilman Zunick?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Chisolo?
Yes.
Mayor Longo?
Yes, item 6G. To consider resolution concerning purchase from Morris County Co-op.
F.
All right. F. 6F, to consider resolution concerning 2014 LoSAP for Cedar Grove Volunteer Fire Department.
Be it resolved by the Township Council that the attached certified list herein of the Cedar Grove Fire Department is hereby accepted.
So moved.
Second,
Mayor.
any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Toole?
Aye.
Councilman Pinella?
Yes.
Councilman Zunick?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Chisolo?
Yes.
Mayor Longo?
Yes.
Mayor, just one comment on that resolution. If you look at the resolution, it just goes to show you the dedication of our volunteers. If you look at the years of service, most of these men have, men and women, they put their life on the line for us, whether it's snow, rain, morning, night. And I just want to highlight that there's a lot of guys with a lot of years of service that have benefited this community greatly. And if we ever had to have a paid fire department here, our taxes would be through the roof. So these guys do a wonderful job, and I think this is money well spent.
Thank you, Tom. All right, 6G. To consider resolution concerning purchase to Morris County Co-op road resurfacing.
Be it resolved that the Township Council authorizes the purchase from the Morris County Cooperative Pricing Council Contract Number 6 for road resurfacing from DNL Paving Contractors for an amount not to exceed $34,477.50.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilman O'Toole?
Aye.
Councilman Pinella?
Yes.
Councilman Zunick?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Chisolo?
Yes.
Mayor Longo?
Yes.
Again, Mayor, I'd just like to comment on this resolution. This was for paving that was done last month. It was to pave Church Street, Elm Drive, Reland Lane, Frederick Court, and those 4 streets were done. And we have probably about 8 more streets that are going to be milled and overlaid, along with 2 or 3 others that are going to be totally reconstructed. After the brutal winter that we had, we put an extra effort, and council gave us a few extra dollars to make sure that our roadways are safe and paved in a good fashion. So that's what this is all about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 6H. To consider resolution concerning purchase through Morris County Co-op road resurfacing.
Be it resolved that the Township Council authorizes the purchase from Morris County Cooperative Pricing Council Contract Number 6 for road resurfacing from Tilcon, New York, Inc. for an amount not to exceed $92,785.12.
I recommend we approve this resolution.
Second, Mayor.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Toole?
Aye.
Councilman Tanella?
Yes.
Councilman Zunic?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Chisolo?
Yes.
Mayor Longo?
Yes. Item 7, approval of bills.
Be it resolved that the summary of bills, having been duly audited and found correct, are hereby ordered paid in the amount of $390,638.61.
So moved.
Second, Mayor.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Toole?
Aye.
Councilman Tanella?
Yes.
Councilman Zunic?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Chisolo?
Yes.
Mayor Longo?
Yes. Okay. Item 3A, to consider adoption of pending ordinance 15780, addendum number 1 to the Cedar Grove redevelopment plan, Hilltop property.
An ordinance adopting addendum number 1 to the Cedar Grove redevelopment plan, Hilltop property.
All right. At this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Deputy Mayor Chisolo.
Thank you, Mayor. And first, let me welcome everyone here tonight. I realize the air conditioning is not working, and unfortunately, we have to just bear with the situation. I know it's very trying, but nonetheless, this issue is even more trying. It's an issue that has paralyzed much of our community. Sadly, there's been a lot of misinformation that has been spoken about it. And the meeting tonight is not only to talk about the item on the agenda, but more importantly, to inform you of the accuracy of the issues. And there are many of them. This is not an issue that I can simply sit here as a council member who's lived in the community for dozens of years and has been fortunate enough because of you to serve on the council and just strike a yes or a no to. This requires a lot of information that the council has been privy to, and I don't know of anyone here that I'm sitting with that is in favor of this. But in order for each of you to understand the severity of the situation, tonight we're going to go through a series of discussions with our professionals as well as my colleagues on the council to address it. We're going to have our town attorney talk to us about the ramifications if we do nothing or do something. We have Mr. Serenian here, who is our COA expert, to be able to explain to each of you, as he has explained to us, the issue regarding our COA obligation. Okay? In addition to that, we have Mr. DiVincenzo here, and I welcome you for being here this evening, Mr. DiVincenzo. I know that you were here at the last meeting, but due to the complexity and the importance of the issue, he's come back to talk about the open space portion of the proposal. In addition, my colleagues and I have spent a good number of years, and I can't even describe to you the amount of hours in discussing this issue. All I can say in plain layman's terms is we've kicked the can to June 1st. And now we have a decision that we have to make. But before we make that decision, we've invited you here tonight. Now, we started this invitation back in January when Kay Hofnanian came before us and presented the plan. How did we get to that point? Well, we have litigated and litigated and won and litigated, and we've sat and we've listened, and we had negotiations in the past that were turned up to be dead ends, if you want me to use my direct comments. And In the meantime, based on certain things that were going on, the recommendations of our town attorney, as many of you may or may not know, when you're in a situation where you're forced to do something, you have to be open-minded and at least be able to listen. And my colleagues and I have done that. We've listened. We have a proposal that has been brought before the public back in January. It's been sent to our planning board for input. We've had a few meetings where residents have come before the council and have asked very important, direct questions, and we've answered them. Tonight is a culmination of many, many, many dozens of residents sharing a lot of chatter either on Facebook or communication to the council. And sadly enough, as with the size of our community, and you'll hear tonight the size of the issue, it's not something that you're going to get the correct information unless you really hear it from the horse's mouth. So tonight, we've put together that information. And if my colleagues have no objection, what I've recommended to do this evening would be to listen to our town attorney, listen to our Mr. Serenian, our COA expert, hear from our council as well as Mr. Tucci, part of our staff, and more importantly, hear from you. Now, many of you probably have never attended a council meeting here. And if you read an editorial in the Verona Cedar Grove Times a few weeks ago, you would have learned that Cedar Grove runs a business-like meeting. And that's something that I'm very proud of. And what I mean by that is each of you are going to have an opportunity to be heard. And that will happen at the conclusion of the presentations. And in order to be heard, we ask that you raise your hand, come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. I realize, and there's nobody with less patience here than me, it's very frustrating at times because you want to either jump out of your seat or you want to react to something that's being said. But I have to caution you, when I run a meeting, I'm very, very direct, and more importantly, I want to respect everyone that's here, no matter if you're sitting in the front row or if you're standing out in the hall. Everyone needs to hear what's being said, so I'm going to forbid any sidebar chatter or discussion. I realize if you want to have that, that's your right. I would ask you to go out into the hall. This is the most important issue in my 18 years serving on the council. So in order for it to be done correctly, and for each of you to leave here hearing the information, I ask you to please indulge in my rules. And it's the rules of what a decorum is. So I'm sure I'm not asking you to do something that you probably wouldn't ask your siblings, your family, your children to do. Again, this is trying, I get it. I sympathize with you because I've done it for a good number of years. All right. With that said, I realize it's warm. I realize that we have limited seating. There are a few seats throughout the crowd here. I would ask the people that are in the hallway to please come in. I know that some of the microphones here may come off very low. I speak loud. I hope that you can hear me. I can't say that everybody here is going to speak at the same level, so that's why I'm asking you to please come in and be part of the discussion. The council has no objection. I'd like to move on and introduce our town attorney, Mr. Scrivo. If you could please go over the legal aspect of what you have shared with the council, as well as informing the public.
Deputy Mayor, just before you start,
Yes.
people in the hallway, if you'd like to line up along the wall, at least you'll be better able to hear what's going on. It'll be tight, but make use of the room we have. And there are some seats here and there.
They're open, they're open. The windows are open, I'm sorry. Yeah. Cheers? Yeah, no. By July 1st, it'll be fixed, right?
Don't worry, we're on it. Let me tell you, when Joe Carter put it on,
Thank you
it
for
was
that.
working, and it
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'd ask that you indulge on our town attorney who's gonna describe, the situation. Mr. Scrivo?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I know that this is repetitive to all of you, members of the governing body, and to some of the people who have been here in the January meeting as well as the meeting 2 weeks ago, but I understand that it's an important topic, and the governing body has asked me to give a brief overview of what brings us here today. And as the Deputy Mayor indicated, this is the most important decision he's been involved in for the last 18 years, but more importantly, this is an issue that has occupied the entire last 18 years for the governing body in some way, shape, or form, including the original adoption of the redevelopment plan that had been done, had been planned prior to 2000 and adopted in 2000. And just for the benefit of the public, there is an existing redevelopment plan that exists here in the township. It is for a 1,000-unit continuing care retirement community that would take up every square inch of the center of the Hilltop area where the hospital center is. That's county property and ECIA property with no open space. And in addition to that plan, that also calls for 45 single-family homes. So in total, the existing plan that we're looking to amend this evening, or the council is considering to amend this evening, already exists with 1,045 separate dwelling units that have been approved. And importantly for the council's determination, that had been approved by the governing body of this town as well as 2 other towns for a full master plan Hilltop redevelopment back in 2000, an amendment in 2001, and that provides for 0 open space. Following the adoption of that by the governing body and by the governing bodies of the 2 adjoining municipalities, the township had sued the county and K. Hovnanian back in 2005, seeking to set aside the transfer of Hilltop Parcel 1 because it claimed, the township had claimed that it violated certain laws. That lawsuit was not successful, but the governing body was holding the county and K. Hovnanian's feet to the fire with respect to all of the procedural requirements, and the court crafted a remedy which would allow the parties to consummate that transaction. And so Parcel 1, which is that area west of Fairview, as well as the area that cuts down into Parcel 5 along the Cedar Grove, along the, what I'll call the north side of the area east of Fairview, was allowed to be transferred, and K. Hovnanian was able to purchase that property. That property consists of roughly 48 acres, and K. Hovnanian has a right, the ability to build 45 homes on that property. And so that occurred in around 2005, and you see that's contained in the orange area that's there on the bulletin on the board that you see. So that is the existing plan that I referred to previously. The brown is the CCRC, and the orange area, if that's kind of colorblind, I think that's orange, but if it's not, I apologize. That is for the 45 homes, including homes that were going to be constructed on Doctors Row. Back in 2005 was the first time that K. Hovnanian had approached the township to enter into a potential amendment of this redevelopment plan. Clearly, this was not something that K. Hovnanian had wanted to build, the 1,000-unit CCRC that was contemplated back in the late 90s. It was not something that probably at that time the township wanted either. And from 2005 to 2010, there occurred numerous meetings with K. Hovnanian entertaining the potential amendment to that redevelopment plan that would yield at least some open space, because as the public and the governing body is aware, that's a significant amount of space that would be developed with the continuing care retirement community. For example, that brown area with the CCRC center was going to be constructed with 100 buildings over that area, so that there would have been an extremely dense development. Between 2005 and 2010, there had been a number of proposals from Kay Hovnanian, none of which addressed affordable housing. Not once did Kay Hovnanian say that they would develop affordable housing, that they would contribute to affordable housing. They were looking to make a monetary contribution, and that very well may have coincided with certain activities that were going on at the Supreme Court at that time. But there was no attempt by Kay Hovnanian to build any of the affordable housing obligations that the township may have. And so that may have put the township and the governing body did entertain a number of conceptual plans by Kay Hovnanian, but at no time did KHOV look to construct the affordable housing, and as a result, there was no meeting of the minds, there was no interest on behalf of the township for any of those proposed developments. And it's important to know that I think the lowest density that Kay Hovnanian got to during that period was about 560 units, was the lowest number that they had gotten to with respect to a proposal. So up until 2010, there had been no appetite on behalf of Kay Hovnanian to satisfy any of the township's affordable housing obligations, which obviously with this size of development is an important consideration for the township. That changed back in 2010, which coincided with this administration's coming into power in Trenton, where the administration was not keen on COA, did not make affordable housing a priority, but the fact remains that there are two Supreme Court decisions called Mount Laurel, and there's a Fair Housing Act, all of which impose certain obligations on townships like Cedar Grove. And regardless of what the administration wanted to do vis-a-vis COA, affordable housing and Mount Laurel obligations were not going away simply with the change of an administration, as they've been in existence for decades and have been first determined by the Supreme Court to apply and then by the legislature in a Fair Housing Act to apply. So sometime in 2010, Kay Hovnanian agreed to at least consider building affordable housing units, and then filed what was known as a builder's remedy lawsuit against the township. The builder's remedy lawsuit essentially sought to quantify Kay Hovnanian's rights in the ability to build high-density affordable housing units. Builder's remedy suits are tools brought by developers to force townships into negotiating better deals so that they could satisfy the township's affordable housing obligations. They're basically a leverage tool. They're done all over the state by various developers and builders. Towns from Cape May to Upper Saddle River face builder's remedy lawsuits, and particularly when you have large undeveloped tracts such as this that parties have contractual rights to, and here Kay Hovnanian did, they utilized this tool in order to bring about a change to the redevelopment plan, because the township had been giving Kay Hovnanian a difficult time in the negotiations and not giving into Kay Hovnanian's demands. So that builder's remedy lawsuit was filed in 2010. It was litigated for 4 years. Cost a lot of money. It was litigated successfully. But importantly, the reason why it was litigated successfully was because, and Mr. Jeff Serenian is here today, he was retained by the town as special counsel to work with my law firm to defend the builder's remedy lawsuit. But the big defense that was successful in that case was that COA was an operating agency which should be responsible for taking on these issues, and not courts. And we argued that successfully not only in the trial court but in the appellate division. And frankly, at that time, the ruling was correct, because at that time we were able to successfully argue that COA was an operating agency because they had conducted a meeting here or there, and because they had some members, and because of a lot of things. That all changed more recently in 2015 when, at the Supreme Court level, and I'll let Mr. Serenian speak to this a little bit more in detail, but the Supreme Court basically called out COA, the administration, and said, because you don't meet and because you don't conduct any business, we're going to place this issue into the hands of the courts on an individual basis, thus putting and foisting all municipalities, including Cedar Grove, into the hands of courts to address issues of builder's remedy on a case-by-case basis, which would then, obviously contribute to not only a flooding of the courts, but a good amount of uncertain future. At this very same time when this was going on, you should also know that K. Hovnanian, because it's the owner already of the orange parcel, had filed an application before our zoning board for 411 affordable housing units in those 41 acres. And it did so under a novel theory called the fact that it was an inherently beneficial use, that this affordable housing is an inherently beneficial use, and so they sought to essentially change the redevelopment plan through the zoning board by filing this application for a use variance. This gets a little detailed, and I apologize for that, but I think it's good background for everyone to understand what brings us here today. Initially, the zoning board refused to act on that because they said only the governing body can change a redevelopment plan. K. Hovnanian appealed. The trial judge sent it back down to the zoning board and said, you must consider this application. And the concern there is obviously K. Hovnanian would put in a significant amount of proofs, and then it would be an issue for the zoning board to determine. So all these forces were coming into play. The Supreme Court deciding that COA doesn't exist and Cedar Grove has to take care of its own affordable housing obligations in-house or go to court. We have the zoning board appeal, which was overturned by the trial court, which means that K. Hovnanian is currently before the zoning board on an affordable housing plan with 411 units in just 48 acres, which leaves no open space in that orange area. At the same time, you have the litigation that the county and K. Hovnanian were involved in over the title to the parcel 5, which is that brown area. And so all of those issues are converging at the same time, and the governing body used the leverage that it was able to garner in the win of the COA case, as well as through negotiations that I've watched firsthand this governing body go through to reduce the number of units to from 560 units, which was the lowest that K. Hovnanian would go during that period of time, to 460 townhomes. Township appointed a special committee. The township retained the services of Mr. Serenian. The township received a number of professional reports from K. Hovnanian. And the plan that is for public hearing tonight and final consideration is for 460 townhomes of a various style, the majority of which are townhomes that, pursuant to the Rutgers study, do not, and I know there's some concern over people's belief of that, but it's the only study that's been adopted by any court in this state, so it's the one we have to go off of, that do not produce the number of school children that other types of home products do, particularly single-family homes. And so you have master downtown homes, 93 of those, which have the master suite on the first floor, which attracts either an empty nester or a senior living type of product without having that tag. And you also have stacked townhomes, which really attract first-time home buyers. And you have more than half of the units comprise that array. And you have affordable housing obligations consistent with our requirements, which we've been given advice from Mr. Serenian will go a long way, if not fully satisfying our affordable housing obligations. And you have 77.5 acres of open space, which, if I could ask Mr. Paganelli to kind of just throw that up as the what it looked like now. All the green is the open space. That's essentially a very rudimentary look of what the two types of developments look like. And obviously the county executive will speak on the issues related to the parks. In addition to the 77 acres of open space, K. Hovnanian, the Township Council has negotiated a $1 million redevelopment fee for K. Hovnanian to pay for, to write to the township. It goes to the township's general fund. the council has also negotiated a completely new firehouse, which would go in South End in place of the existing firehouse, which would be assembled with the two properties that the township and the fire department own. A demolition of that existing outdated firehouse, which not only leaks but is nearly a safety hazard, and a construction of a brand-new firehouse there. In addition, in the middle of that area, there's a small square of a lighter green color, which will be a new ball field that K. Hovnanian will construct where the existing ball field in the township is, but it'll be one that the township could be proud of, that the township council has negotiated on behalf, and a pilot agreement. The pilot agreement is existing here because this is a redevelopment, and pilots are appropriate in redevelopments. And under that pilot agreement, essentially, it'd be straight taxes. So the way the information that we received, it means that it would be an average of about $9,500 in taxes for each of those units. And again, that goes up and down depending on the size. And 95% of that would come to the township for its use and for its use to defray costs to the school board, as opposed to what typically happens where more than 50% of that cost goes to the school board without any decision on the governing body's part, because it's a statutory formula that applies all through the entire state, both urban and suburban areas. So rather than be subject to that formula, the township will decide in its own right where that money can go based on the actual number of students that are generated by that development. That would be a 30-year pilot. Based on all of the fiscal impact studies, it would be a boon to the township, despite what many may think. But that's what currently is before the governing body this evening. Mr. Serenian is here to answer any questions with regard to how he has guided the governing body, and you may want to hear from him as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Scrivo, I will, just for the public's edification, could you just explain how much in legal fees the township has expended thus far?
How far back?
It's going to make me look bad, right? Charge you. It's probably $250,000 in legal fees the township has expended on this issue.
And if we were to continue, as some of the information out there has stated, to litigate and fight, can you share with the township council as well as the public how much of a budget you feel that would be, and what do you also feel our chances of succeeding in a lawsuit would be?
Well, the lawsuit hasn't been defined, and I'm going to let Mr. Serenian also speak as to what would be contemplated, but the Supreme Court has set forth kind of like parameters as to what's going to happen, so there has to be certain action done by July 8th, and there's going to have to be either a lawsuit by the developer with respect to the builder's remedy, or a lawsuit by the township to kind of seek refuge from those builder's remedy lawsuits. So one of those things must happen by July 9th. If we do nothing, we will certainly be sued by the developer and perhaps other developers with respect to doing nothing, because the Supreme Court has basically opened the gates as of that date. If we get a deal and eliminate those lawsuits, we then can file our own litigation, because the Supreme Court has allowed us to do that, to essentially seek refuge and to say, look, this is the plan that's appropriate, this is the plan that meets our affordable housing goals, and we have to put everybody on notice with respect to that, but, based on, if what the council is considering this evening is going to be adopted, our Affordable Housing Council, myself, our township planner, David Banish, who we've retained as well, who's not included in that $250,000, have all believe that is a significant step forward to bringing peace to the township with respect to the affordable housing obligations and potential builders' remedy lawsuits.
Okay.
As for a budget going forward, if you really get into the meat of this, you're talking about a $10,000 to $15,000 a month type of case, which is what the K. Hovnanian case was when it was at its peak.
But what does that mean in budgetary numbers?
Well, cases last 2 years, so you're talking about $15,000 a month times 12 months times 2. you're talking about 300, somewhere between 180 and $360,000, much like this was at the time. And again, this case had a lot of downtime because of everybody's watch on Trenton and seeing what Trenton was going to do versus not going to do. Don't forget, the governor took office in January 2010. Soon as he took office, COA was the subject of a priority of his, and so there had been a lot of downtime in this case while this case was stayed and other things were not happening because of things that were waiting to be happening in Trenton. We won't have that this time because this is an open the floodgates type time frame that the Supreme Court has set for July 9th.
The last question before I call upon Mr. Serenian, and this is something that has been shared around the community, and again, I hate to use the word misinformation, but we're trying to clarify things tonight and bring everybody to the same page, regardless if they agree with the development or not, but to hear the facts. And as Joe Friday used to say, just the facts. So with that said, there's, I understand a petition that has been sent around the community for a binding referendum to be put on the ballot sometime in November. What credence does that play in a decision with regards to what's before us this evening?
Okay, so the action that the council is taking tonight is an addendum to the redevelopment plan under the local housing and redevelopment law. That law is, without question, the strongest law that the legislature has ever passed. It basically allows what you're doing this evening, which is to provide overlay over certain zoning, so it trumps the municipal land use law. In addition to that, it gives you the option and the ability to create the pilot agreements, and there are eminent domain aspects of it. It has the most power. So it trumps a lot of other laws that exist. One of the laws that it trumps is the initiative and referendum law contained in the Faulkner Act. So it has been specifically written into the local housing and redevelopment law that any change to a redevelopment plan is not subject to initiative and referendum. So there is no way that a referendum could be circulated in the township that could legally change what you're doing this evening. It's just something the legislature wanted. It's one of the additional powers that the legislature granted to municipalities as it relates to the governing of redevelopment projects, and the legislature has said, and courts have since ruled, in upholding such challenges, that initiative and referendum is not the subject cannot be the subject of a change of redevelopment plan, even though our charter allows for initiative and referendum. So you'd be in an area which doesn't really provide any ability to make any change.
Thank you. Before I move on to Mr. Serenian, does anyone on the council have any questions of Mr. Scrivo? Councilman?
Just one, and I think it's obvious, but you mentioned the zoning board application for 411 units?
Yes.
Was it? Obviously, you can tell by the map, but just so we're clear, if we were to amend the ordinance tonight, that zoning board application is withdrawn, correct?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
We're not talking about 460 plus 411.
No.
Just so everyone's clear.
It's just, there you're talking about the 411 just on the 48 acres, which is
Winding Way part.
the Winding Way part and the area west of Fairview. That's the 411 they're seeking. Then you still have to deal with all this other area.
Right.
The other, 90 acres or so, whatever that is.
Does anyone else have anything?
Well, yeah, I do, Deputy Mayor. You touched on it before about kicking the can down the road. Mr. Scrivo, if you can just convey to the public, what are the consequences of us doing nothing to continue to delay this? Like I think we've successfully done over the last, I'd say, few years, as we've continued to fight with KM Nanian on this issue. Now we're coming to an end of a road, as you mentioned, with this July 8th deadline. What are the consequences if we chose to do nothing and just say, you know what, let's just let the chips fall where they may and go forward?
Right. Well, like I said, you're going to get sued, and you're going to be litigating the affordable housing aspect. At the same time, the county would be litigating its aspect with, KM Nanian's entitlement to the property. So, from my standpoint, it gives you control over what could be an uncontrollable situation. You're taking control to craft a remedy for the township that you won't have control over. So it's either, are you going to have control, or are you going to let yourself essentially be controlled by whatever occurs in those lawsuits? There will be development. There's no question about that. And there will be an attempt to go back to the zoning board to get those 411 units on those 48 acres. That's not going to change that. So that's going to go forward. So you have these convergence of issues. You have the county litigation. You have the zoning board application. You have, we're on the precipice of a builder's remedy lawsuit to be filed by not only, and just so you know, that Cab Manning is not the only player in this. I'm not going to speak too much because this might be the subject of executive session, but there's another player out there. It's Fair Share Housing Center. There's other players out there who are parties to these types of cases. And, you know, we suspect that Cedar Grove will be getting a lot of attention, as it is now, from a different community that's going to be looking to litigate these cases come July 9th because of the size of this undeveloped property.
Does anyone else have any?
I do, I'm
Counsel?
sorry, but I had a follow-up. If there were to be a builder's remedy lawsuit, or any other number of lawsuits that the builder can file, I assume they're not going to court and just asking for 460 units, correct? Like, what potential number could they seek?
Well, in the litigation that they sought, or that they filed already, I think they said that the number of what they said was that, I believe the number was in excess of 600 units that they were looking to get approval for through that builder's remedy lawsuit, and that was the lawsuit that was filed in 2010. I can't say what they'd say now, but they wouldn't be limited by the 460, that's for sure.
And it basically boils down to the decision of a judge if we litigate it fully.
Well, and there's no credit you get for open space. I mean, there's no, like, working that out. You know, if they say we have, 100 acres and we want to build on all of them, which developers usually want to do, there's no standing that you have to say, well, we should keep some of it open, because if you keep it open and it's in the hands of Cab Manning, it's still developable. That goes toward your, now I don't want to get into Mr. Serenian's terms, but it goes toward your kind of allocation. Here, what you're doing is you're getting property out of that, what I'll call inventory, giving it to the county. It would be open forever, and therefore not subject to that calculation that a court could use later to determine how many units you should develop.
Okay, does anyone else on the council? Seeing no, I'm going to recognize Councilman-elect. You raised your hand to say something. If you'd like to come to the podium for the record and just ask you a question, and then I'm going to move on to Mr. Serenian.
The question is for the attorney.
Can you just, for the record, your name and address?
Sure. Harry Kimburis, 41 The Glen, Cedar Grove. The question for the attorney. When you said that the binding referendum won't hold any water, I thought it was a non-binding referendum tends to not hold water, but a binding referendum tends to hold water.
Yeah, so the difference there is that this law that this council is acting under tonight doesn't allow binding referendums.
Mm-hmm.
But no, so in this case, the only thing you could do is have either a non-binding referendum that would gauge the sentiment of voters, which means nothing under NJSA 1937, or a binding referendum, which is proposed, which would be illegal. So it's one of those two options.
Even if the builder does not own the two parcels that he wants to build on, or the one major parcel that he wants to build on.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with it. Right.
But how do you rule on something if you don't own the property?
Well, you're asking for a binding referendum. My understanding is
Binding referendum is to stop and then decide at a later date.
There's no ability to conduct a binding referendum under NJSA 40A:12, this statute, this redevelopment statute. We are in a redevelopment world. We're not in a municipal land use law world. So under the law of redevelopment, you're not allowed to, the legislature has specifically said there's no binding referendums under this law.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Serenian. Because of the way our configuration is this evening, if you don't mind, could you address us from the podium? Sure. And just for the record, state your name and address and the company you represent. I do appreciate you being here this evening.
And if I could, Deputy Mayor, if I could just jump in and ask Mr. Serenian to, before he jumps into anything, if he could just give his background as to how long he's been dealing with affordable housing issues and what his whether he what his practice entails.
That's fine. Good evening. How are you?
I'm great. Okay, so my name's Jeffrey Serenian. My office is Jeffrey R. Serenian Associates in Brielle, New Jersey, 707 Union Avenue. My background is I started working in this arena about affordable housing laws back in 1983, 1984. I clerked for Judge Serpentelli his first year as Mount Laurel trial judge in the wake of Mount Laurel 2. Since that time, I've devoted my entire career to practicing in this area. Now, I started a firm about a decade ago. We only represent municipalities. We only represent them on affordable housing matters. We will not represent developers. That's what we do. We do it all over the state. We have over 50 clients that we represent exclusively on this matter. And so that's my background. I've been living, breathing, and sleeping this for 3 decades. And the situation that we find ourselves in today, let me just elaborate a little bit on the litigation I was involved with when I came into Cedar Grove. When I came into Cedar Grove, even though Cedar Grove had filed its affordable housing plan with the Council on Affordable Housing, a builder's remedy suit was filed. And initially, the trial judge said, you know something? I'm going to let that builder's remedy lawsuit proceed. We were able, I think Tom was successful in having it dismissed, and now we were up on appeal. And the argument that the developer made is that he should have a right to prosecute his lawsuit because COA was inactive. It wasn't doing its job. It hadn't met for a number of years. We ended up arguing this right before COA reconvened and started meeting again. So we had the good fortune when oral argument took place that COA was indeed functioning. And so the court dismissed the lawsuit, and we were able to prevent Hovnanian from going to the Supreme Court. But what's happened since then is COA has just fallen down on the job. Basically, it was the responsibility of the Council on Affordable Housing to promulgate rules, and that those rules would provide guidance throughout the state. And what happened was, instead of providing rules in the deadlines that the Supreme Court established, they violated it. They failed to adopt rules. They deadlocked on October 20th of 2014. And so a motion was brought by Fair Share Housing Center, and that motion was that towns should be exposed to builders' remedy suits unless they passed a certain test that Fair Share Housing Center advocated. And we were in front of the Supreme Court on January 6th of this year. The opening of the oral argument before the Supreme Court was the sitting Chief Justice calls in the attorney for the Council on Affordable Housing and said, you know, we entered an order, you were supposed to adopt these rules by October 2014. You failed to adopt it. Here it is, January. What have you done? And the answer was nothing. We haven't met. We have no plans of meeting. And the Supreme Court was aghast. I mean, the justices were looking at each other, and one justice even remarked there might as well be a closed for business sign on the doors of the Council on Affordable Housing. So what the court ended up doing is on March 10th, they entered their opinion, and their opinion basically said that these matters are now going to go from the Council on Affordable Housing back to the courts. So it's a whole new arena that we're in right now. And they also said that when you go back to the courts, and if we'll give you an opportunity to bring a declaratory judgment action, to bring yourself under the jurisdiction of the court, we'll give municipalities an opportunity to apply for immunity from builders' remedy lawsuits. But whatever you do, you have to notify Fair Share Housing Center, the most zealous nonprofit advocate in the history of this state for affordable housing. And you also have to notify the Builders Association, okay, the league and others. So it's a whole new world. And the other thing that's significant right now is there's a battle going on about what your fair share number is. Fair Share Housing Center has issued a report on April 16th of this year. And according to their report, the obligation for Cedar Grove is over 700 units, okay? Now, COA's expert took a different view, but they didn't adopt the COA rules, and COA's expert was severely criticized. So the point of all this is when the issue about the possibility of settlement arose, it was taking place in a specific context. And the context it was taking place in was great uncertainty, CO had fallen down on the job, Fair Share Housing Centers advocating stratospheric fair share numbers, and here we have an opportunity to take a piece of land and to settle litigation. Now, you look at 460 units and you're aghast. I can just feel it in this room. But in the Mount Laurel case, it can be much worse. I have one word to describe the conduct of a builder in a builder's remedy case, and that word is shameless. They come in with shameless densities, they wrap themselves in the flag of affordable housing, and they try to max out on density. That's what happens in every case. I've been through this stance for 30 years now, and that's what happens in every case. And so when this developer came in and was offering a substantial amount of open space and to develop a limited portion of it, I've never seen developers come in that, willing to give you that much open space. So from my perspective, measured against what you routinely see in builders' remedy lawsuits, I thought here was an opportunity to take great uncertainty and to create some certainty. Is it perfect? No, but it would control what happens on this site. And so I thought that this was favorable and that this was something that the township should look at as an opportunity, because it's a way of controlling what happens on the site and avoiding the risk that Fair Share Housing Center, that has been tremendously successful, comes in and gets big numbers, and the developer comes in and, like all developers do, starts demanding very high numbers. At a density of just 6 units an acre, this site would accommodate 865 units, 142 acres, 6 units an acre, 865 units. That's not a heavy density in a builder's remedy lawsuit. Developers come in and typically ask for a lot more. Now, I understand that that's a gross density, that's not a net density, but in a full-blown litigation, there is tremendous risk. So that creates great incentive to create certainty.
Mr. Serenian, obviously, everyone here today is as concerned about this as we are as a council. And we were elected to be their eyes and ears to make a decision on the issue. There's been a lot of information that's been shared throughout the community, including the possibility of someone suggesting senior housing, okay, in a particular section in order to forego our COA obligation and to forego any development. Can you give us an opinion on that scenario?
Okay. There's a few implications about it being senior housing. One issue is what density you assume. Because, if Fair Share Housing Center is successful, and I'm not saying they will be successful, but if they are successful in saying the number's 700, how much density there is affects what number you're allowed to adjust your obligation down to. Okay, so a high density, a town agreeing to a high density impacts on what the obligations of the town translate to be on the sites that would be available for development. The other thing about age-restricted housing is in the past, you've typically been restricted about how much of your obligation you can satisfy with age-restricted housing. And that number has been 25%. So you're limited, you can't satisfy more than the likelihood. I mean, one thing that happened is the Supreme Court invalidated all of CODE's rules in its 2013 decision. And so the trial judges have to make up the rules as they go. But the likelihood is they're going to say, no more than 25% of your number if you can satisfy the whole number, and if you're entitled to an adjustment, the adjusted number can be with age-restricted housing. So that's the other problem with trying to have senior housing here.
Okay, you being our expert, as we all acknowledged, and we appreciate all your work, what do you feel a council such as us, with the situation we're in, is there any other element of satisfying our COA obligation other than what we've discussed?
I'm not, are you asking
Is
me
there-
what's my best advice on how to proceed and view it?
Exactly. Is there another avenue that we either haven't discussed or that we haven't really embraced to satisfy our COA obligation?
Look, I mean, you can go into court and you can, try to argue for a lower obligation and try to bring the number down, but it's a high-risk proposition. You have Fair Share Housing Center coming in with a number over 700. You have, COA had proposed rules where the number was much lower, but there's a lot of risk involved with that. So, that's why I'm suggesting that you take advantage of the opportunity to create certainty. So yes, you could litigate, but it's high-risk litigation, and the work that COA's expert did to bring down the numbers was severely criticized, and whether it would hold up or not is a high-risk proposition.
Thank you. Does anyone on the council have any questions of Mr. Serenian? Mr. Tucci, I know I haven't recognized you. I apologize. I know you're there, but is there anything that you'd like to address?
Yes, I looked at this from what the existing zoning is on the property, which is redevelopment 1,000 units CCRC. And what I did was I tried to take a comparison of what this plan proposes versus 1,000 units CCRC. And again, I'm the township manager. I look at it from a very factual standpoint, a lot different than a lot of other people. Being selfish, I have to deal with a lot of the problems that this development will give us or not give us, no matter what happens on the property. And just to be redundant, just go over what the beneficial aspects of this plan are. Obviously, you're going to have 460 units versus the 1,000 units CCRC. You're going to have 77 acres of open space. A big one for me is you're going to have the demolition of the old hospital buildings, which in my estimation are an eyesore, and they create real problems from a policing standpoint in that, I don't know if anybody goes on that weird New Jersey website. We have a lot of vagrants that go on this property, and we're arresting people all the time because they think it's some, suspicious place to go and play, which it's not. We're going to have the extension of Keeney Road, which is that paper street on the bottom that'll go up from Grove all the way to Fairview. As the attorney said, there's a proposal for a $1 million redevelopment fee. There'll be not an expansion, but a brand-new firehouse, two-bay, on the Pompton Avenue site, which will service this area. There'll be a brand-new Little League baseball field to be constructed by the developer. Also, as part of the 460, there'll be 90 units of affordable housing. Now, again, those are the positive aspects. As the manager, I got to look at everything. I got to look at the negative side also. And no matter what happens on this property, we're going to experience an increase in population. The 2010 census says that we have 12,411 people, and based on the financial impact analysis that Hovnanian submitted, we can estimate that there's going to be probably about another 991 people that are going to be added based on this proposal. The density is 460 units on 61 acres. That's a density of about 7.5 units per acre. It's going to generate school children. Based on the Center for Urban Policy, they're estimating 102 school children. Again, you would have to be a psychic to figure out what you're going to generate as far as whether they're going to be first grade, middle school, whether they're going to go to high school, whether they're going to go to private school. So, that's going to run the gamut. And again, the product is going to basically dictate what that is. As far as traffic is concerned, the Institute for Traffic Engineers is estimating that this development will generate 557 less trips than the CCRC. So it's going to generate less traffic than the CCRC. As far as water is concerned, this site, 460 units, will generate usage of 87,000 gallons per day of water versus the CCRC and the 45 single-family residents would utilize 145,313 gallons. So this will generate less water usage for this development. As far as sewer usage, it's proposed that This development will generate 126,750 gallons per day, and the 1,000-unit CCRC would generate 152,150 gallons. Again, it's going to be more treatment if you go with the 1,000-unit CCRC. The issue of fire, we addressed with the firehouse, which will service this area. There's also other site plan issues that we have to deal with, and I believe the planning board hit it right on the head. There was a separation of 25 foot between buildings. The request from the planning board was to increase that to 40 foot between buildings. And again, that's to protect our firemen and from fire with wind. You see on the news all the time, the wind blows and you have a row of houses burned down. So that was a very good suggestion on the planning board's part. And also, as far as height, the planning board recommendation was 44 foot and 3 stories and nothing more. So, moving on from there. Overall, when you look at the two developments, what's the existing zoning and what's being proposed, and strictly from a factual standpoint, the proposed development is more favorable than the CCRC. Again, you're going to have a lot more, and again, the traffic is going to be a major issue because the trip generation at Grove, especially Grove and Pompton, everybody knows that Grove and Pompton is a very congested area. Well, you're going to have a lot more trip generation with the 1,000-unit CCRC with the employees and the visitation of family and friends. So, that's the facts that I put on the table for the council's consideration. Again, I'm not the sixth council person. All I can do is give you the facts, and you make the decision based on what the facts are.
Thank you, Mr. Tucci. At this point, if no one has any other questions of Mr. Serenian, I'd like to call our county executive. Thank you so much for your presentation. Good evening, Mr. DiVincenzo. Thank you for being here this evening. I know you were gracious enough to come 2 weeks ago, and the council felt it was important to, again, have the people of the town here to hear firsthand the open space portion of the development. So it's up to you.
First of all, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, to the council, I'd like to thank you, especially the public. Like you said, Mr. Scrivo's been going on for 18 years. The previous administration sold a total of 9 parcels to the ECIA for $44 million. They were in Verona, it was in North Cornwall, and of course, right here in Cedar Grove. 8 of the 9 parcels have been sold. The only parcel that has not been sold is the one that we're talking about, is parcel number 5. When I became the county exec in 2003, there was 2 major county facilities here. There was one, the jail, which was under federal consent order, that was built over 100 years ago, that the previous administration started building, but I had to complete it and get it done within 2 years so that we could move the inmates down in the new facility in Newark. The other one, of course, was the hospital center, which all was over there, and that was under federal consent order, and we built a smaller facility in Newark. I still was left with the $44 million. Not one parcel was sold under the previous administration. So we had to work very closely with the 3 towns in making sure that we were able to pay off that debt of $44.5 million. The parcels that we're looking at, that parcel number 5, if you remember, and I read something in the paper, you saw my picture over there with the 90-acre park. All right, and what I did was trying to push the envelope by meaning that if you took notice, if you remember then, I started taking down buildings on the one side, Turning Point, those other facilities, on the county taxpayers' dollars. Because I was trying to push the issue, because we weren't getting it resolved. Because I figured I could get that parcel 5 and sell it to the state and put the park right there. I even went to the Freeholder Board and asked them to consider that 90 acres of open space, and they voted yes. The next day, we had litigation by Hovmanian. Totally against it, all right, because they wanted to build there, those 1,100 units, whatever it was, in that particular facility. So there's been negotiations that have been going on back and forth. When I came 2 weeks ago, I came here to state a fact that I'm still committed to make sure. Could you just take that down, Jimmy? Sure. Building a park here. It's not going to be the 90 acres. It's going to be 77 acres. Show them parcel 1, Jimmy. That's right there, Jimmy, on top.
or the other one, I guess you gotta put that one down first. Parcel 1 is that number 1 all the way down, they already bought that from the county for $12.5 million. All right? Their suggestion, their proposal to us, because it came from recommendations from Councilman O'Toole, because he wanted to move the development away from Winding Road, and he wanted it to push it more on the Veroni side. So Hovnanian came back to us and said, listen, Joe, this is what we will do, and we'll put a proposal to Cedar Grove. I said, because I can't approve anything. He says, I'll give you back parcel 1, all right, in return, I'm not gonna give you any money, but that's in return for parcel 5, which is not 90 acres now, is what, 60 acres, that they wanted to do development. That's 77 acres there, the way it stands now. I will build a park. If anything I did well in 13 years is build parks. And Mr. O'Toole has said one thing, too, is that he would like to have a county park in Cedar Grove. And when proposals were going back and forth, I committed to Councilman O'Toole that there will be a county park in Cedar Grove of 77 acres. Now, what would that park consist of? Passive park, just like you see in Verona Park. You see the historic lights, every one of my parks have that. Every one of my parks has all kinds of trees. We have benches, all right? The only thing that might be in there is, and this will come as a suggestion when we're designing it, is if you want a playground for the kids, or if you want exercise equipment when you're jogging around. But the majority will be passive. I won't design anything without your officials and the public involved in here in Cedar Grove. The other good thing that we were doing, see this park that I'm building, 77 acres? We have 22 parks in Essex County. This will be the 4th largest. The only ones larger than this park will be Branch Brook, Week Wake, and Anthony? Brookdale. This is 77 acres. Every other park is 50 acres or less. Verona only has 54 acres of park. Now, everybody's talking about continuous and stuff. This park is continuous right around. And it will be, and this will be, yeah, there is a street there, but we will make the best of it there because we have no alternative. And it will be a park there. And something that we all could be very, very proud of. Now, those acres, to making sure, when I'm not the county executive, what I'm going to do is sell those to the state. Once they put some more money in their trust fund, I sure, with the help of Senator O'Toole, could get the county reimbursed from that so that the money I get helps to what? Build the park here. Just like what I've been doing. What am I missing, Jimmy? What's that? The corner lot, the lot on the bottom, yes, yeah, it's all green, it goes right around the whole entire thing. There's a 7.3 acre thing that's already there that you use as the bike track there, that's already there. That's about 7.3. The other thing which we did is when we did this, and this is what the previous administration, when we worked out with one of the governors, is that we were able to get 284 acres of hilltop reservation. 154 acres were in Verona, and the other 130 are in Cedar Grove, which we sold to the state, which was preserved forever. We have 5 reservations. Cedar Grove will have the 4th largest reservation in the county. So that was my commitment, and that's the commitment I lived with. Just like the council, I would like to preserve that 5. I would like to sell it to the state, but we're in litigation. And Mr. Scrivo said 250. You could double or triple that on the county side, what we paid already. All right, because we're the first ones that got taken on there. So, and if we continue going on, because I did not stop the litigation, the only way I would stop the litigation if the council here was to confirm and telling us to move forward. And I'm here, and anytime you want me, mayor, deputy mayor, council, we're all in this together. We've been working on this for 18 years. And whatever the decision's here, we'll live with it.
Thank you. Does anyone on the council have any questions of Mr. DiVincenzo? Councilman?
Good evening, Mr. DiVincenzo. First, thank you for coming again. I want to go back to what you mentioned, I think 2 weeks ago. At that point, I think you held up a map as to what would happen if the county lost the lawsuit with K. Hovnanian. What would it look like?
That's it. It's
Okay.
all development.
So if you lose the lawsuit with them now,
There's no open space there. The only open space that will remain there is the ball field that they were talking about, because that's something that we did not give up, that green spot there. Everything else, if you don't come up with a decision, we will go to court, we will fight it, all right? But there will be buildings on all, that entire piece of land.
and and as far as constructing the park for us, that can only happen if we amend the ordinance.
Yes. I cannot go back to the freeholders until you guys make an ultimate decision. Our litigation is still there, but like Mr. Scrivo says, you know, I thought I could push the envelope, like I said, with my picture and a sign here and take a gamble. I lost. They
Was
just
it
found
the
out they
picture
got a
or
lot
the
more
sign?
lawyers than us. What?
Was it the picture or the sign?
I think it was the picture, because after a while it started fading. And they would start mustache on, but I left it up because I was a good sport. But I just wanted to come here tonight. There will be a county park here, but I can't do it unless the decision's made by the council. But either way, but I'll live with it.
Mr. Scrivo, if I could just add to Councilman Zunich's point, the county lawsuit involving what is depicted here as Brown Parcel 5, if the lawsuit is unsuccessful, it compels the sale to K. Hovnanian. Compels the sale to ECIA. ECIA then has to turn it over to K. Hovnanian. I don't know if that rotates itself back into some other type of builder remedy lawsuit that you may be facing.
So they own everything.
They would own it all.
The other thing, though, I want to say, besides preserving that 284 acres, we made sure the Township of Verona had additional recreation space for their athletic fields. We did the same thing with North Colwell, and we did the same thing where you guys built that beautiful field, Panther Field, and that design there. So.
And we want to
already-
thank you because you sold us that property.
I know. Very cheap, too, by the way.
But thank you very much. I'm sorry.
One last question. The county would maintain the new park?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. DiVincenzo. If the council has no objection, I'd like to continue through some of the elements. I do want to, again, thank you for your cooperation. I hope that you can hear us. I truly appreciate the respect that you're showing us by listening and keeping things to a minimum. I think we're getting through this very quickly. Now, the object is to discuss the planning board report, the school report, and the traffic report. If my colleagues have no objection, I'd like to talk a little bit about the school impact report, as well as addressing the pilot. Now, there was a lot of misinformation shared about what a pilot is. And someone spread a rumor that the people that were going to be living in this proposed development were not going to be paying taxes. And that's absolutely not true. Okay, what a pilot does, and there's a benefit to the pilot, and you need to hear the benefit before you can say no to it. The benefit to the pilot is that the township will collect 95% of the taxes. The county only gets 5%. So when you go home tonight or tomorrow, you pull out your tax bill and you're going to find out that roughly 54 or 55% of your tax bill goes to the school taxes, 24% goes to the county, and the remaining portion, which is about 21 or 22%, stays here in the municipality. That's for the municipal portion of the budget, as well as about 3% of that money has to do with our garbage collection. So, as a council member, I'm here to minimize the financial impact to you. And my colleagues and I have worked very well in doing that. So it's better for us to retain 95% of the money collected rather than give another 19% of it back to the county. Remember, the county's only getting 5%, and this can be negotiated in a deal of 20, 25, or 30 years as a pilot. Now, I know that the biggest concern is, how is the township going to take care of the financial obligation of our schools? And it's very simple. In my opinion, and I'm sure my colleagues would go along with it, we would earmark a percentage consistent with the amount that's collected currently by your taxes to be given each year to the schools. So if that number is 54%, 54% of the monies that we collect, assuming my colleagues agree with me, would go to the school portion. And I would go one step further. In order to guarantee that, because I'm not going to be here forever, and my colleagues are not going to be here forever, we would pass a resolution that would be consistent with the time frame that we agree to the pilot to make sure that this council, as well as future councils, fulfill the obligation of providing to the school the percentage of money that's needed in order to school our children. If we decide not to go with the pilot, then you would go with, the money would be collected, the county would wind up with approximately 24% of that. Remember, right now under a pilot, they're getting 5%. They would wind up with approximately 24% of that money. So I ask you, is it better for us to manage that money as a township and work with the schools? Or do you feel better giving that portion back to the county? Because under my idea, and I'm sure my colleagues would probably agree with me or at least discuss it in a healthy way, we're going to be getting your money back, 95% of it, and managing it. And we're taking care of what we need to take care of. So I think that would be something that I would like to entertain with my colleagues. I don't know what their opinions are, but rather than not have something in writing, I would advocate for that to be put in writing immediately through the expiration of the pilot so that the school issue is addressed. And it's addressed in a very healthy, consistent way each year by this council, if we're here by the time the ground's broken, or the future councils. With that said, I just want to address the report that had been provided to us on the fiscal impact addressed the amount of school children. And based on the development you heard this evening with the amount of affordable homes, affordable housing homes, as well as the rest of the development, they're proposing, based on the Rutgers report, of approximately 102 school children that would come into our school district. There's no way of knowing if they're going to be primary grade, if they're going to be a middle school, or if they're going to be high school. But that is the number that has been given to us. The Rutgers report, from what we have been made aware of, is the report that is used widely throughout the state for developments such as this. Again, you know, there's no magic wand we have. We're giving you the same information we have. I can't guarantee you that there's going to be 102. I can't guarantee you that it's going to be 62. I can't tell you there may be 110. We have to deal with the information that's been given to us. There's no other analogy that can be used to give a more firm number than what we're disclosing this evening. Does any of my colleagues want to add to any of my comments regarding that? Or the pilot?
No.
Okay. With that said, would one of my colleagues like to handle the planning board report, as well as just talk a little bit about the planning board report? I know that had come up in the past, and I don't want to seem like I'm controlling this whole meeting.
Actually, Deputy Mayor, if I could, with regard to the planning board report, you know, there's been talk about inconsistencies with the master plan, and the project is inconsistent with the master plan. Obviously, I think any redevelopment is inconsistent with the master plan, but just first, initially, perhaps if Mr. Scrivo could just touch upon that portion of it, as to what the report means when it says it's inconsistent with the master plan, and what bearing it has, if any.
Sure. Through you, Deputy Mayor, as we said before, this is a redevelopment amendment, and any redevelopment must go through the planning board for a master plan consistency analysis. And so the master plan in Cedar Grove doesn't contemplate the 1,000-unit CCRC, doesn't contemplate what's currently there, but it contemplated obviously a hospital center and open space. So by definition, any review by the planning board with master plan consistency would deem this proposed development inconsistent, because it certainly is inconsistent with what is there. And it pointed out a couple of other items of recommendations, and I think one of those was touched on by the township manager earlier with respect to separation, et cetera. So, and there was another one that addressed the township steep slope ordinances, and I believe the developer took that into consideration as well. So, I don't want to say it's perfunctory, but given the factors that exist here with respect to what you have to begin with and where you're going, it was by definition going to be inconsistent because the current plan is inconsistent. So they pointed things out, they did their job, and the governing body certainly followed the laws with respect to getting input from the planning board.
Actually, Deputy Mayor, if I could just follow up on that, and if this ordinance is amended tonight, at some point, the project would go back to the planning board for site plan approval, fine tuning as far as entrances, exits, drainage, landscaping, et cetera?
All that stuff would be the subject of site plan review, and obviously the township has, a very good planning board that holds developers to the letter of the law, and that would happen after any amendment to the redevelopment plan. There'd be a significant planning board review of all of the bulk standards. This sort of does an overlay, but all that nitty-gritty is done by the planning board.
At a public hearing, of course.
Many public hearings, I suspect.
Thank you.
Councilman Zunick, are you going to address anything further with the planning board, or?
No, it wasn't my intention.
Okay. I know the public has heard the development mentioned both by our attorney as well as, I believe, Mr. DiVincenzo. But for the record, I just want to restate what the actual development consists of, so that everybody understands clearly what the proposal is. And the number that we are dealing with is 460 townhome units, which are 97 traditional townhomes, 93 mastered down townhomes, 180 stacked townhomes, and 90 townhomes to be considered affordable housing to meet the COA obligation that you heard of earlier. In addition to that, the development would have its own clubhouse, parking, detention basins, as well as its own internal open space. The people of the township would have a 77-acre parkland, as Mr. DiVincenzo had expressed before, and as he had stated, he's willing to work with the township in developing some other aspects to it, as far as maybe a playground, as far as exercise equipment, things such as that. In addition, Hovnanian will pay the township $1 million redevelopment fee. In addition to that, they will be expanding, which would be knocking down the South End Firehouse, as well as the building that's adjacent to it, and reconstructing a two-bay firehouse to accommodate the size of the fire apparatus. Now, many of you would probably say, as I have said, well, why do they need a new firehouse? Well, over the years, if you look at the size of fire apparatus, they have not gotten any smaller, they have grown. And we had a situation many years ago when the Center Fire Company took delivery of their new fire truck. It was much higher than the building allowed. So we had to do some construction in order to raise the overhead doors as well as remove some of the brickwork. The height of the fire trucks have become a problem for municipalities such as ours, where we have older fire stations. So in order to accommodate that, in light of the fact that the South End fire engine will be probably less than 3 years from being replaced, we're going to need to address that, as well as the structural damage that currently exists within the building. And K. Hovnanian, again, has agreed to construct a two-bay firehouse to accommodate the needs of the township. In addition, they're going to construct a new Little League field. They've asserted they would negotiate the pilot, as we've discussed with the township, with us a few minutes ago. I think I've covered what the development is. I'm not sure if my colleagues want to add to anything there.
Deputy Mayor, I just had
Yes.
I had a question for Mr. Scribo. You talked about and you explained the consequences of us doing nothing going forward. Can you explain to the public what the next steps would be in the event that we do pass this ordinance tonight?
Sure.
What's the time frame, the procedures, what goes on next?
The next thing would obviously be execution of a redevelopment agreement and designation of K. Hovnanian as a redeveloper so that they can go and carry this out. I believe that the county, and if it gets the high sign from this council, would then consummate the transaction with K. Hovnanian. That would obviously take a series of months to finalize that. Then K. Hovnanian would apply for site plan approval, and that would take some time. They would need probably months to conclude their engineering and other studies that are required for a typical land use application of this size. It's not so typical, but for Cedar Grove, but it happens, and it's a significant undertaking. Those planning board hearings would occur. It's likely that it would take a number of meetings, which I think you're dealing with a 6 to 9 month time frame for what I've talked about so far. And then assuming that the application, they'd be filing an application that would have no significant variances because of this overlay zone, so it would conform substantially with what the governing body is setting forth here in terms of bulk standards. But after that, then there would have to be, I don't believe that the K. Hovnanian would undertake the demolition until all the approvals are concluded, but it's possible that the county could negotiate that for us, so that those things can be cleared out. And then it'd start construction, which would be clearing and dealing with that land. So you're talking about a significant, probably a year before there's any activity to dig a hole to build the first unit, and then probably a development this size would take a couple of years to build as well, build out completely. So even that school children number, you're talking about a phase-in of that to an ultimate, full build-out, but that's going to take some time. So that would not be an immediate impact for the school, certainly for years before that. Obviously, time moves quickly, but it's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's going to happen in the future.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? At this point, if no one has an objection, I'd like to move forward with the meeting by inviting the public to come up. As I had stated earlier, again, I want to thank you for your cooperation. As you can tell, this is a very trying issue to discuss. It's a lot to absorb. Many of you are hearing this for the first time. In order for this to move orderly, I would ask that for anyone that wants to be heard, to raise your hand, come to the podium, and at the podium you will speak by giving us your name and address. There are 100+ people here tonight, and I'm here until everybody that wants to be heard is heard, and I'm sure my colleagues feel the same way. The only thing I do ask is if you're going to agree with somebody that has already spoken, in order to afford everyone else to be heard, maybe you just want to say, I agree with that person, I don't agree with that person, so that we can move the meeting along and I can get through everyone and everyone feels like they've been treated fairly. So who wants to go first? The gentleman in the blue shirt in the back.
I'm Michael Gerini. I'm a lifelong resident of Cedar Grove. I'd like to start.
Your address, please?
I live on Briar Hill Road.
You're
47.
47, thank you.
I'd like to thank Mr. O'Toole for his service to the town, and in the military as a soldier myself, I know what it is like to sacrifice like that, so just like to thank you for that.
Thank you.
The Hilltop for me is a nice place the way it is. To the gentleman in the corner who said it's an eyesore, he just might not know good architecture. The bricklaying is really nice, and the way they laid the foundation is excellent, and though I've never been inside, I'm sure the buttressing on the corners of those buildings is amazing. They're truly a monument to the history of this town. And as a fan, I resent the term vagrant for being a fan of it. But, you know, the Hilltop is a quiet place for me to bring my dog, you know, and hit a couple golf balls from the side of the road in the baseball field. And to be honest, I'd really like to see it stay the way it is. Mr. Cambiris won the election, I think, just through his signs saying, stop the Hilltop development. You know, he won that election on that alone, I'm pretty sure. And so I'd like the council to do whatever it can to stop any development there. And whether that means litigation or not, and a risk of greater redevelopment, you know, I think that might be a risk worth taking. I think we should play for the win on this rather than take a safe bet with half measures. That's just the way I feel about it, and I just wanted to come because this is an important issue. I'm sure we don't get this turnout often at council meetings. I know this is only my second, and my first one, I think my dad took me just to see what it was like when I was a kid. And from that one time, I decided not to come back until now.
Yeah, but we had such a friendly crowd. It's been a lot of fun. So every month you can come. We have a public meeting. I really encourage you to come.
I appreciate that. I just wanted to, again, just stress the point that I'm against any development there. And I do appreciate the plans of the county executive making the best of a bad situation with the park. You know, I appreciate his plans, but I think we can do better. I think we can stop this redevelopment. And I know it has costs. Litigation costs money. I'm aware of that. But, you know, our taxes are already high. We might as well spend them on something we think is worthwhile.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. Anyone else wishing to be heard? Yes, sir.
Johnny Miller and my wife Elena. We're actually new residents, 58 Elmwood Road.
Oh, welcome.
Lived there less than 60 days. So, you know, my biggest thing is I have a couple questions for you guys. Because I'm retired Army Special Forces, lived around the world, and I'd just like a little clarification on subsidized housing, affordable housing. I'd like to know what that means in your terms. All political correctness aside.
Well, low-income homes, and Mr. Scrivo, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is based on a formula to afford people that qualify with low-income salaries to be able to have housing available to them. Mr. Scrivo, is that correct?
Deputy Mayor, you're paying the foremost expert in the state to kind of be here tonight, so I would defer to Mr. Serenian rather than venture any interpretation of that term.
The way the formula works out, 40% of the households in the state are low and moderate. So,
Stand up to King in the back,
I'm
please.
sorry. The way the formulas work out, the Fair Housing Act sets out the formulas to define low and to define moderate. And the way that works out, 40% of all the households in the state qualify as low or moderate. So they're households, they're typically teachers, policemen, they're typically people that make a significant amount of money. You'd be surprised how many people qualify. And they use once they define low and moderate, then they back into the price that they can sell or rent units so that the unit qualifies as affordable. So I don't have the specifics right here, but the planner would be able to tell you, a family of 4 in this region, the units maybe go for $150,000 for moderate, and then it would go lower for they would sell at lower prices. But if you had a unit that sells for $150,000 to a moderate income household of 4, for example, that unit may be worth $350,000. The units are not identical to market units, but very often they try to blend the units into the market units so that it doesn't impact the sale price of the market units.
Okay, so in other words, we're not bringing riffraff into the community. So I think that's a big concern, at least it is for us. I mean, so.
I think there's going to be, I think you'd be surprised how many people qualify as low or moderate and how many people would get these units. They have to be affirmatively marketed, but the reality is that it has not been a problem in my experience.
Okay, I've lived all over the world, and it tends to be. So, but thank you. So my second question is this a foot in the door phenomenon? So, right, so we agree to this tonight, we voted in, so then all this open space, what's next? Is another developer gonna come in? We're gonna have litigation down the road?
That's a great question. Deputy, if I can answer, you want me to answer?
No,
You ready?
please, yeah,
Yeah, so that's a great question, Deputy Mayor, and the county executive touched on this. So what would happen is everything that's green would be preserved forever to never allow another developer to come in. So that's the function, that's the control issue that we talk about that doesn't exist if you allow things to kind of just happen. So here we have the ability, and Kay Hovnanian is willing to do it as a result of the convergence of issues, including the county litigation, to send that green portion to the county, and then the county executive would do what he does with respect to preserving, as he's done all over the county, preserving properties as parklands forever, whether that's through Green Acres, through state formula, whatever. But it would be, I don't want to say deed restricted, because then you get into like some legal difficulties of whether you can actually deed restrict and then sell, but it would be vacant, passive parkland forever that no one could ever come and develop.
Okay, awesome. No, thank you, guys, appreciate it.
Thank you for the service to
Thank you
the
for your
country.
service.
Appreciate that. Anyone else wishing to be heard? Yes. Mrs. Jager? I try to move around the room, so don't take anything personal.
Jean Jager, 9 Bradford Way in Cedar Grove. Jean Jager, 9 Bradford Way in Cedar Grove. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the very informative presentation. I learned a lot tonight, and I realize that you have worked long and hard on this project for many, many years, but I still have some concerns. I love the Hilltop property. I, of course, would like to see it stay the way it is, but I realize that that's not possible. But I think there are some things that I need to say. One, as most of you know, I can't get any closer to the microphone without eating it. I'll use my teacher voice, okay? I taught in Cedar Grove for 30 years. I was on the Board of Education for 6 years. And I know that population studies that try to predict how many students are going to come into the schools are at best guesses. And sometimes they work out, and more than often they do not work out. And this is why in Cedar Grove we've had 4 elementary schools, we've had 2 elementary schools, we've had schools closed, we've had schools open. And when we develop this property, it is forever. And we cannot change it when it is done. So I think we need to think very carefully about what we are doing, because once it's done forever. If the amount of children, and we're not talking about just now, we're talking about the future, we're talking about forever, changes about how many, when homes are resold, we don't know how many children are going to be in the schools. It could mean reopening another school, which is at a cost because it would have to be up to the regulations for now. It could mean busing, which is a cost, because all of the schools, all of the elementary school children that would be there now would be assigned to South End School. If they went to North End School, they obviously would have to be bused, so that would be a cost. It would mean redistricting. It could mean a lot of things. So those are a lot of things that have to be thought about. Also, our fire and ambulance departments. I mean, this is a lot of new people coming in. We're volunteers. Are we going to have enough volunteers to cover all of this? The deer population. Right now, this is one of the last refuges for these deer. When I moved into Cedar Grove over 50 years ago, I never saw a deer. Now they're sleeping in my backyard. Now, I happen to like deer, so I don't mind them sleeping in my backyard, but what's going to happen to all of the deer that are going to be displaced by, and not only the deer, all of the other wildlife is going to be displaced by all of this building. And of course, this is all about money. And I guess I'm getting old, and I'm getting a little tired of big businesses like Hovnanian running our lives and using pressure to get us to do things that perhaps this community doesn't want them to do. Now, I know you have a big task ahead of you, and I appreciate all the work you've done into it, but please, when you make your decision on what is best for the people of Cedar Grove, not what is best for Hovnanian.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm Raymond Shea. I live at 16 Bruce Court. It's right around the corner here. Say hello to the council and all my neighbors. But I agree with the teacher that was just talking. She's smarter than me with the deer, and I could tell you they're a menace. And Mr. DiVincenzo must understand that. He's been handling it for years, and you can't shoot deer with houses up there. What are we gonna do? I don't know. But the other problem with this is all the traffic lights they have to go in with the county's gonna have to deal with it, the timing, the 20, 30-second light on Bloomfield Avenue, which is already packed with Hovnanian traffic from the jail. And the school in Verona, boy, they're gonna be in danger. It's school hour, the traffic. There's gonna be one traffic jam, but it's no longer morning and night. It's all day. There's people that are retired, the town is aging, and people are driving all day. And I've been hit by little accidents here and there, and we have one food town. Maybe they should build a shopping center up there too, because who's gonna put a double-decker food town lot in? I don't know. So there's a lot of problems with it. Personally, I'd like to see it go down 50 more houses. However you go about it, I don't want the town to pay for it. I'll pay for it. I'll throw $1,000 in right now into a super fund for the town. I mean that. And it is a little dangerous litigating, but will they do it over 50 houses? I don't know. But the thing is, we could all put money in it. Let's face it, our taxes will double over the next 5, 8 years, or triple over the next 10 or 15. Why not put the money in now? I know it's private property. Once it's private property, it's sacred under the Constitution. There's nothing we can do. I understand that, but we can go to the EPA, maybe go to Washington, get them involved. Forget about it. It'll never go through once they get their nose. But I don't know what the answer is, and I'm just venting. I've been here 33 years. It's a wonderful town, and as Mr. O'Toole knows, and I just hate to see this happen. A one-lane road, it's not gonna work out. We'll do the best we can, we'll live with it, but it's all these problems, and I apologize to Mr. DiVincenzo, your ears must be burning in my household and a few others, but I appreciate what you did. So, thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you for coming. Anyone else wishing to be heard? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Nicole DiCera, 21 Ring Place.
Welcome.
Thank you for everything you guys have done, especially tonight. I learned a lot, so I appreciate that. I have a few questions. The next meeting is scheduled for,
June 16th?
is
15th.
is there any way to not have the vote tonight and push it a little bit longer? Because we have a lot of questions.
Well, we're here to answer your questions.
Okay, so that's my first.
Whatever happens with an agenda item is not my sole decision,
Okay.
it's the decision of the council.
Next question that I have. Is there any formal communication that can be pushed out to the taxpayers, to the residents? Because a lot of people don't know, and the onus is on us to find out what's happening in our town. I do understand that. But with something this big going forward, is there something we can set up with Nixle or something about the agenda for the town meetings that are gonna be
Are
happening?
you talking about the discussion for this tonight, or are you talking about future?
I'm
issues?
talking, well, let's focus right now just on Hilltop, but going forward.
Well, with regards to this here, we've had, I believe, 2 Nixle alerts. There have been hundreds and hundreds, including yourself and myself, with, as well as Councilman Tanella, with Facebook messages. We've done, I believe it was on the Scribe. There's been media coverage in the newspapers.
I don't know if
One
it's
of the
reaching
problems-
everyone. That's the issue.
And I realize it's, it's no different than a major storm, and we've talked about this with regards to Nixle. You're gonna have people that don't have internet access. You're gonna have people that don't read their emails. You're gonna have people that don't read signs.
Flyers,
And
mailers?
it's just the way it is. And it comes to the point where we have done as much as we could do to bring you people here tonight, to bring all of you here tonight. Okay, is it a perfect world? Absolutely not. Am I perfect? No. But the bottom line is, I think that we've done a very, very good job in communicating the meeting through a lot of social media.
Yes.
Through some of the internet-based news sites that are in town. So, future, could we improve? I think there's always room for improvement. But dealing with this issue, I think that we have exhausted the way of communication. And you gotta understand something. A lot of the people, sadly enough, found out about this through an election. And I'm not here to criticize you with it, but along with that, there was a lot of misinformation that
Yes.
generated a lot of hysteria that, sadly enough, was a problem, okay? And it was a problem because the way I've met you on Facebook is was some of the postings that either Councilman Tanella and myself or other people have commented on.
But
Again,
a
it's
lot
not
of
a
my-
perfect world.
yeah, no, a lot of my
We're here
posting too got a lot of the
and we're
people
dealing
here.
with it, and we're here to answer your questions and to.
So,
to
all
go
right,
through
so
it.
that's kind of administrative, and I'll,
Okay.
the next question I had was, can we ask, and this is the reason I was asking for, like, not voting tonight, can we go back and keep this? Because I agree with this is here to stay, okay? And this is, from what I see, the best proposal. Is there a way that we can ask KHOV or whatever they're called for more concessions? And why I'm asking is, what if they're grossly wrong? And I'm an RU alum, so, but what if they're grossly wrong? And I understand that out of the pilot, I think you said, and I'm not quoting you, but 54% would go to the school. Does that include the capital projects that would be to
That equation,
expand?
okay, to answer you with regards to that as well as the public, that percentage pie that I shared with you is based on today's equation, or
Right.
actually 2014, because 2015's taxes have not been struck by the county yet.
Right.
So when that is done, we will have the updated pie. But that is pretty much the most current pie. You have to work with something.
Okay.
And that is the fair number to work with based on today.
And I understand that, and I'm happy that we're earmarking some up for the school, but if we have to, let's say, open a new school or expand LRP, is that the money that would go towards that? Or would it have to be another bond referendum that would go out to raise the funds?
All right, we're talking a hypothetical situation,
Yes.
so I'm gonna answer you in that way.
Yes.
I would assume that it would need to be done through a bond referendum.
Okay.
Because if that 55%
Right.
or 54% is part of their operating budget that they use in order to
Right. That's for
pay their overhead,
teachers,
salaries
that's
and
for-
everything, I don't know,
That was
they
the
know better than
distinction I was
that.
asking.
Yeah, right,
That
they
was
know
the
better than that.
distinction. So if we do need to expand the schools, we would need to raise the money with the taxpayers
Correct.
somehow. Okay, so that's why I'm asking, can we get more concessions? Let them pay for it. If we say to them, here are the statistics that you're giving us, and you say 102 students are coming, And let's get it in writing from them. Can't we say, if we have 300 come, you have to pay?
Deputy Mayor, if I
Well,
may.
Difference.
there's
And I'm not a
couple-
lawyer, so
There's a
I'm
couple of
just-
scenarios here,
Yeah.
and that is the fact that we didn't come here tonight, okay, with a proposal that we started last month.
Oh,
We have worked for quite some time, and if you heard the reports earlier, the numbers had been at 550, okay? There were a lot of different scenarios, including the COA number for that portion of land being much different. So it's not that we haven't done our due diligence and exhausted our
I think you've done more than you're doing. I agree, and I'm saying keep this, but ask them for a little bit more than $1 million. More. I mean, KHOV, how much are they worth?
Great minds think alike.
Yeah.
So it's a compliment because the exact question you just asked, I asked way back when in the proceedings.
Yeah.
How do we know it's gonna be 102? Let's get them to agree
Right.
to pay the amount over 102.
Right.
Didn't work. We tried.
Yeah.
We also tried for more than $1 million.
Yeah. And they're holding still to,
What happens is each time we
got-
went and said, I'm
Good,
not
good.
trying to, each time we said we want $2 million,
right.
the housing number went up.
Okay.
In other
That's
words,
the piece
let's
that I don't
be
understand.
curt about it, and we've
No,
done this
that's-
tonight. This is all about money.
Absolutely.
This is all about money. It's all about a development. It's all about profits. It's a public company. They
Right.
want to make money. So if we want $3 million hypothetically for a
Right.
school, that development is going to increase in numbers. And I think my colleagues would agree with you.
Or the number of affordable housing units will either go away or decrease.
and then, okay, so I understand, and, you know, you have to indulge me for asking.
No, that's fine. And it's good that you're asking because we did go back and forth
Yeah.
many times.
Yeah.
On different issues, and it was almost like, I don't want to simplify it, but like buying a car, talking to a car dealer. It's the most frustrating thing on earth.
Yeah.
I hate it. You know, you're going back, he's going to talk to his manager, here's a sticker price, I can do this.
Right.
You know,
My
but
last
that's what it was.
question?
Go ahead.
Instead of asking for only, I think it was senior housing, are we able to do senior housing in conjunction with the affordable? And this probably is a question for you, where we do have a lot of seniors who would benefit from the affordable housing. So we kind of we would kill two birds with one stone, in that we would guarantee less kids and also take care of our COA
Mr.
responsibility.
Deputy Mayor, if I could just jump in on that, because again, it's this whole flex concept of open space, number of units, density, and money. They all play into the factor. So even before Mr. Serenian answers, and we definitely want him to be perfectly frank, K. Hovnanian makes less money off of senior housing, so the density goes up. So if we were talking about that, we would be talking about more units, which is greater density, which is less open space. And so that's why the council negotiated this master down unit, which would be a product that is one that's attractive to seniors and empty nesters, that is much less density and is more profitable for Hovnanian to keep that number down. Is it perfect? Like, you can always change with every number, but that was, I just want to give the public the benefit of the council's negotiations over this specific topic.
The Mount Laurel answer to that is, it's very rare that you see family and age-restricted projects next to the same project. It's usually one or the other. That's my experience.
Can we ask? We're desperate. Thank you for your
Okay,
time.
thank you. Yes, ma'am, in the back, and then
Bernadette Rosen, 27 Winding Way. Hello again. I was just here 2 weeks ago, so you know that I agree with everything everybody has said regarding the concern for the schools. I even suggested splitting the development in half to take the stress off of South End and moving some kids to North End. I voiced concerns about the busing and all that, but last time I was here, remember I did a real quick Google search on K of Nanian and told you on my phone. So I just wanted to pass out this newspaper article for 103 condominiums that were built by Hovnanian in Wayne, New Jersey. Also bring to the attention of council that Hovnanian is not accredited with the Better Business Bureau. And 22 pages of the Division of Consumer Affairs complaints from people around the country that have the same exact problems that the Wayne condominiums have been addressing for the past, I think, since 2010. And these are not, of course, there's, faulty light fixtures and uneven walls and, structural things, but there's very serious issues that's going to affect the community even more than trying to get down Pompton Avenue. It's drainage issues, it's cracked sidewalks and roadways, it's mold, it's water pooling from the shoddy workmanship that these guys are doing. And I know you tried to assure me last time that the planning board is going to, be up on them and monitoring them, but how are we as a community to know that they are going to be held to better standards than they have here? I highlighted so you could just breeze through, some of the complaints.
Can you fast read that?
I should have made, a copy for everybody, but, it's the same thing. It's broken roadways, it's water pooling, it's mud, it's, drainage issues, roofs flying off. I mean, how are we going to hold them to a higher standard than they've been doing across the country so far?
Well, I think to answer your question, Mr. Scrivo summed it up best 2 weeks ago, and that is that we have some of the strictest construction laws here in the community. Our inspectors are well-trained, and they understand exactly what the law is and what they have to hold people to a standard.
Mhm.
It's sad that corporations like K. Hovnanian take advantage of people like you and I who invest our monies to buy their property. But our community is very tight as far as the inspection process, as far as the approval process, as far as the re-inspection process. So we have a good handle on that. Does that mean that they're gonna have a perfect development? Absolutely not. There's complaints from residents that live at the development in, off Commerce Road.
Mhm.
Okay, there's no perfect way. It's not my choice
I know.
to pick them. They're the property owner, okay? So they've come before us to negotiate in conjunction with the county as well as the township to come up with a product that they feel would be good.
Mhm.
This is not something I'm excited to even deal with.
Okay,
But
well,
the fact is, as far as the inspections and all, I think as Mr. Scrivo, Mr. Tucci's pointed out, and we're well aware, there's an it's been a long night, inspection process,
It's the heat.
which they will have to adhere to. Is it gonna be perfect? I'm not gonna tell you it is, it's not. It's not, because the inspector's gonna go do his work. Does that mean that the building's not gonna have a roof leak in a year? I can't guarantee that.
Well, okay, so let's just say, the whole development is built, and then all of a sudden, we start having cracked roadways that are in a lot of these complaints. And I used to write for The Progress, so I actually covered a story of a condominium complex that had a broken on a cul-de-sac street, and they could not get the condominium association to come back and repair that. So how, and in all those 22 pages, K. Hovnanian has, double talked and worked their way out of coming back and repairing anything. So how are we gonna get them to come back and really honor their workmanship?
Well, there's also, the state of New Jersey requires all new construction to have homeowners or builders insurance, I'm not sure what it's called.
New home warranty.
Now.
And they're responsible to hold money in escrow so that if something like this happens. But again, I'm not gonna sit here and try to convince you of something. It's not a perfect world.
I know.
There are horror stories out there. We've heard them. But they own the property. They've purchased the property from the county.
Mhm.
So we're dealing with the situation.
Right.
And
When I
as you
believe
heard
this is
earlier,
leaps and
there's
bounds
pro- there's-
better, absolutely.
I'm sorry?
This is leaps and bounds better than, where we came, so.
So I hope I've answered you, but
You
I can't,
have,
I
I know.
can't tell you anything more about what's gonna happen because we don't have a crystal ball.
All right. Well,
right.
thank you.
Thank
Just
you. Thank you.
monitor
I know
them
you've been-
closely, Joe. Monitor them closely.
Thank you.
Hi, Sue Trapp, 6 Eastwood Place. I got a couple of questions and haven't really heard them addressed. Those grounds, I guess that's parcel 5, the orange. It's a very old hospital building, built how many years ago?
100.
Exactly. Had a major tuberculosis situation way back. Has any studies been done on what's under that soil and what is going to be exposed?
That'll be done through the, building process. In
Do
other
we
words,
trust-
when the permits have to be taken out for the excavation, I know that when you're excavating dirt and soil, it has to be tested. Am I correct, Mr. Tucci?
Yeah, there'll be environmental studies, phase 1, phase 2 environmental. I believe as part of the contract with the County of Essex on the switching of the property, it'll be required that they do the proper testing on the property. I believe there's also tunnels underneath that'll have to be vacated and closed up also.
That's correct.
Do we trust them not to go hide something somewhere else?
Deputy Mayor, if I could just jump in, this would all be done under the supervision of the Department of Environmental Protection. It's a very serious issue. The DEP is certainly aware of this site. I don't know, I guess anything could happen, but I'd venture to say that there'd be very little ability for KF Hovnanian to hide anything as a result of this, particularly given the public nature of this development. But the DEP is definitely the agency who would preside over this in connection with local officials. But this would certainly be, nothing could happen there until the DEP signs off on it. Whether it's any kind of removal, demolition, anything, all are required for permitting through the DEP process.
And there's not a concern, or how do we protect water contamination?
But that is all, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, that's also
Could
part
they
of,
potentially be stopped if there's a potential for water
Oh.
contamination?
immediately
Right.
stopped.
Exactly. So, not necessarily with KHOV, but, certainly in other presses, you hear where developments
If
have
I'd
been
ask
done.
if everybody can please keep it down, I'm trying to hear the woman speak, and I want everybody to be able to hear her question.
So there's other developments throughout the country which have been done on questionable areas. Who holds the liability if, let's say, 10 years from now, it's found that, cancer rates have gone up in that particular development? Who holds the liability? Does Cedar Grove hold that liability because we didn't do the right inspections?
Well, who said we didn't do the right inspections? We just heard very clearly of how the process is gonna hold. I mean, you're
Right.
assuming, why are you making a statement, we didn't do
I'm
the
just
right
asking
inspection?
who would be liable if something like that were to happen?
Go ahead, Mr.
Uh,
Tucci.
First of all, the Township of Cedar Grove will not be doing the environmental inspections. They will be done by the Department of Environmental Protection through the state of New Jersey. So that whole process will be through the state, and they will issue no final action letter stating that the property is clean. KF Hovnanian will not be able to proceed unless the state issues that letter. We don't do the environmental portion, but we require that letter from the state before we will issue any building permits for anything to go on. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you. And then in all the talk about the quality of their work, do we trust them to build a new firehouse? Well, reconstructing the firehouse.
Deputy Mayor, through you, whether we trust them or not, I don't know, but they'll have a legal obligation, and they will not be able to get permits and certificates of occupancy until they do so. So we'll have, better than trust, we'll have a contract.
Okay. And then, again, that's an older building. I'm sure there's probably asbestos and some other things probably in that building. Are they taking on the responsibility for the cost of doing all of any
They're
kind of
doing
remediation?
everything that's associated with it, including if indeed there's asbestos or any kind of contamination, it's their responsibility to clean it up based on the Department of Environmental Protection's laws and cleanup procedures.
Okay, thank you. And then you had mentioned about the pilot, and I sort of heard two different things, and it's great. It's great negotiation about that pilot. And you mentioned we can go for like 25 years for the pilot.
It's my understanding we can go 20, 25, or 30, whatever is agreed upon.
Okay, whatever is the agreement. And then we also heard that the development could take a couple of years to actually be there. When does the pilot timeline start?
Well, the pilot timeline would start the same way that any other property would start, and that is when the owners take possession after a certificate of occupancy and they start paying taxes. The pilot doesn't start the minute this is approved or not approved. It starts upon the certificate of occupancies and the occupancy of the people.
So each of those could be staggered, and it could be a
Absolutely.
couple of
It's gonna
years,
take
whatever, and
years.
that's staggering.
It's gonna take years.
Just-
Okay.
Just to follow up on
Yes.
that, as soon as Kovnanian take possession of the property, there'll be a taxable property. Right now, the County of Essex pays no taxes on it. So what'll happen is there'll be progression. They'll pay taxes on vacant land, and then as they build and COs are issued, we'll build up, and that's where it'll be taxable on land and and the building value. So that's the way it'll progress.
But the pilot part starts with occupancy of homeowners.
Correct.
Up till that point, the taxes are gonna still
Well,
continue
it's
to
only
be
a
split the
land
way it is.
tax.
Okay.
It's a reduced rate. It's not something that has any type of improved value to it. It's just a piece of land. So at that point, the tax money coming in, I'm not sure if the pilot would actually kick in until the closing of the home.
Well, it depends on the details on the negotiation, which we're not nowhere near that point.
And it's gonna take years for that to be cleaned up, the phases of the homes built, if the council approves to this. So it's not something that's gonna happen tomorrow or next year, or probably in the next 2 or 3 years.
But the
in my
taxes that we're getting from just the empty land,
We don't get any.
Right now, we're not.
no. When they take possession of it to start their project. So for those number of years that they are preparing for their construction and haven't sold anything, they're paying essentially just on the property, as you mentioned. Is that property then, those taxes, subject to the same percentages going to the county, coming to the town, coming to the school, that is in normal Cedar
If you're
Grove
gonna
today?
have a pilot, then the pilot would be 95% coming to the community, 5% going to the county.
I understand, but the
If we're
pilot-
not gonna have a pilot, it's gonna be broken down the same way that your tax bill is broken down now.
Okay,
No,
so,
I think you're asking while the land is vacant,
correct.
will it be in the 54%, 25%, 21%? I think the answer is yes, but somebody get correct.
Well, until, if, and when the pilot is entered into, that's when the new percentages will take effect. If you look at parcel one, which is in the orange, Kovnanian owns that right now. They're paying land assessment right now on vacant land to the township. Before it was in the county's ownership, we got no taxes for it. Now, when construction starts, or when it's still vacant and we enter into the pilot, it'll be that percentage for vacant land. It'll be 95.5 if the council goes in that direction.
Okay, I'm sorry, that sounds a little bit different. I'm hearing two different
He's
answers.
clarifying, I misspoke.
So it is not when occupancy has taken effect. It is actually when
Well,
we
when I was
decide to start
picturing
the
the pilot, I was picturing occupancy of the people.
Mhm.
But I realized at that point, I didn't speak about the vacant land.
Well, I think I put a caveat in there that whatever's negotiated, the council could negotiate that doesn't take effect until building come in, or they could negotiate that it's on the vacant land from day one. That's subject to negotiations.
Correct. And I think we're gonna cross that bridge, I'm sorry? Oh, okay. We're gonna cross that bridge when the council decides if at all they wanna enter into a pilot.
And what's the negative of entering into a pilot?
Then 55% or so goes to the school, 24% goes
No.
to the county, and the rest comes to
No,
us.
why would we not take the pilot? What's the downside of taking a pilot?
Well, it depends there is no downside. I expressed my opinion earlier. but my colleagues have an opinion also. I don't know what their opinion is.
Can I hear from does anybody have, is there a negative to taking the pilot?
I don't believe so. I think if someone says, I'll give you more money for the town, I'd rather take it. I think your point is well taken, though, and we haven't gotten to that step yet, but I think I'm reading your mind, but your point is well taken, that it behooves us to enter into an agreement that the later it starts, the better, because then it's built out.
Right.
Am I right?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to be heard?
Mayor, could I just clear something up?
Yes.
You know, I just want you to know, just like we did with parcel one, when they purchased this, Mr. O'Toole, if you can remember this, and I think Joe was part of this, we had them demo and clean that up quickly. If the council was to support this, one of the things before I bring you to the board is about getting that site demoed as quickly as possible. They're responsible for the environmental cleanup, cleaning, and the state, of course, DEP is overseeing that. But one of the requirements, I don't want you to see, because I think somebody mentioned a couple of years before cleanup, I'm gonna try to expedite that because we have a serious problem right there with safety and stuff that going up there that it really gets me upset that that's not down. But the reason I can't take it down, I'm not gonna have the taxpayers pay for it because we're in litigation right now. They didn't reimburse me for that other parcel, Charter one. I just don't wanna spend any dollars I don't have to. But immediately, if this was to be approved tonight, before we were to vote on the freeholders, I will get a date when they're gonna start demolition.
Anyone else wishing to be heard? Mr. Zakala.
Good evening, Joe Sakala. I reside at 83 Briarwood Terrace. As many of you know, I'm currently on the Board of Education, and I'm currently in my second year as president of the Board of Education here in Cedar Grove. First, I want to commend the council. I've been following this for many years, and the work that you have done to get us from point A to point B is commendable. And I know it was, from talking to some of you individually along the way, it was a lot of hard work and a lot of time spent, and I see that you are the benefits of all the work that you did. That said, of course, the elephant in the room, which we've talked about, is our school system. And it brings the biggest amount of concern to me when I think about how are we going to house the children, excuse me, the students that are coming into this district. I see the Rutgers study. Maybe it's correct. I know we don't know. I also see a town being increased population by almost 10%, and that would say to me that if the town population is going to be increased by almost 10%, then our school population is going to be increased by almost 10%. Now, that's not an exact science either, but that's 160 children, because we have about 1,600 school children currently in the town. The pilot money is great. We'll take it if that's the way, that's what it comes down to, because we're going to need to pay teachers. We're going to need to have more administrators because we're going to have more students. We're going to need that money to educate our children. But here's the biggest concern. Where are we going to put them? We are maxed out at South End right now. We can't put another student in there. We are maxed out at North End right now. We can't put another student there. And we're maxed out at the middle school. We don't have room in any of those schools. The high school, we have room for. If everyone comes into the district and they're a high school age, well, we'll be okay. But the pilot money is not going to help us build a facility or renovate a facility or make our schools big enough to house and educate these children day in and day out. So while I'm not offering you any alternative because I don't have one, I do appreciate the work that you've done. I think that the council needs to keep that in their mind as we move forward, and as I know that you have. But I just want to emphasize the point that this is going to be a problem for Cedar Grove. A town that can't educate the kids is not going to be a town that's going to be a town that people are going to want to move to. So we need to make sure that we have a plan. And I understand it's going to be phased in. It's not going to be a year or 2 years down the road, but you can't build a school in a year. You need planning, you need time, you need, it takes a lot. And we've had some referendums. I've seen all the work that's gone into that. We passed a referendum not too long ago, and it's going to be a whole nother year and a half before we see the fruits of that labor. And we may have to have another referendum to build another school. And that's something I think the council needs to take into consideration. And finally, I just want to ask that some of the things that I've heard tonight about the pilot, I've heard dribs and drabs about, and some of the things I've heard about the concerns that the council has for the schools, I've heard dribs and drabs about. But I think it may be time that the council and the Board of Education sit down together and we have an open discussion about what is going to happen, even if it's 5 years away or 3 years away. And we talk about what the ramifications, not just for the school, for the town, because what happens with the schools really is going to be reflective of what kind of town that we have here in Cedar Grove. So I thank you for the opportunity to let me speak, and Councilman O'Toole, congratulations on your retirement, and thank you for all your service.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Sir, with the, yes.
It's on the back.
Somebody was planted.
Thank you. Robbie Vargo, 102 Union Street.
Excuse me? I'm sorry, could you just repeat that?
Sure. Robbie Vargo, 102 Union Street.
Yes.
So I won't echo everything that everybody said, but I agree 100%. To the extent we could all say no to the Hilltop development, I think everybody in this room, including everybody on this council, would say no. But somebody on the council said we have to take lemons and make lemonade here. And in my opinion, we're left with two options. And I'm oversimplifying it, but we're left with the resolution, the plan that's on the bottom there, 460 units with 90 acres of open space. We control our own destiny. We know what we have. We meet our COA obligations. As opposed to up on the top, no open space. Option two, we go to court. We lose control. I mean, I've lived in town for 6 years now. And one of the things that really drove me and my family to this town was the small nature of it. We're stuck. We're stuck, and you have a hard decision to make. But I can tell you that I support whatever decision that you make, because we've elected you. Mr. O'Toole, Councilman O'Toole, I think you've done a fantastic job, and I thank you for your service, and I thank everybody here for their service. But we're stuck, and I think we have to make a decision. I'm not a gambler, and I think if we go to option two and we go to court, I think we're gambling with our future. And I don't want to gamble with our future. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I plan on being here for a long time. I don't want to gamble with our future. Something's going to be built here. I think we need to make a decision, move on. You've done a great job in whittling this down from 1,000 units to 800 units to 560 units to now 460 units. I want more. I want more money. I want less units. I think we all do.
Yes. I want nothing.
I want nothing. Right, I want nothing. But is it a realistic option? And I try to be realistic. It's not a realistic option. Nothing is not a realistic option. We can't just vote no. And you know, it's unfortunate because we've had election season and there's been these platforms that we can just vote no. And I think a lot of residents are here today thinking that we can just vote no, but we can't. We have two options, and something's being built. And it's unfortunate for our little town. It's unfortunate that Kay Hovnanian is coming in and essentially bullying us. We're stuck. And you have done a fantastic job of whittling this down to 460 units. The 3 different models, I was at the planning board hearing in early January where I saw the 3 different models that were presented, and they're okay. You know, doesn't fit with our master plan, I guess you could say. But we're stuck. I can't say that enough. The only thing I will comment that wasn't talked about is the park. Some call it a park, some call it a buffer. I tend to lean on the side that it's a buffer. And, you know, if we are going to get what is, with all due respect, is being told to us as a 90-acre park, fourth largest in Essex County, if you haven't heard, but when you really look at it, somebody said at the last council meeting, it's a donut without the hole. And I think it is. I mean, you look at it, I mean, where would I go with my family? We have a street that's in the middle. What are we gonna do with the pedestrian traffic that's gonna cross over there? I do disagree that it is a contiguous park. We have, I think there's 29 acres on the right-hand side. You got 12 acres on the top right-hand side, seven acres on the top left-hand side. I can go on, but it's not contiguous. And I would love, and I can't thank you enough for getting that park. I really do mean it. Talking to residents in this town, my children are in soccer, and we want to be able to use this park. We want to be, we're thinking Verona Park, right? Walk around, passive recreation, and unfortunately, this does not look like a Verona Park. But it looks like Verona Park now. So that's my thoughts. You have a tough decision, but I can tell you this, I support whatever decision you make. You, Mr. Tucci, you've worked very hard on this. The town council has worked very hard to get to where we are. I thank you, and yeah, good luck with
I
the
appreciate
decision.
you coming out. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to be heard? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Diane Rom, 46 Brunswick Road. Again, I'll echo what several people have said. Thank you for your work. We elect you for a reason, and I think you've really done your job. I want to know that if we're going to make this trade and give them that parcel in exchange for the open space, how do we know that it's a certainty to be open forever? When, Mr. DiVincenzo, you said when money becomes available. What if money doesn't become available? We're in this position because the county balanced their budget on our backs, and I don't want to do that again. So how can we make sure that with certainty this open space will be preserved, quote unquote, forever?
First of all, me and Senator O'Toole's been working on this from day one as far as putting a park in here. Not this O'Toole, but his son, as far as getting this acquired by the state. Okay, and that's our goal, is to get it acquired by the state. But we could do, and I asked my attorney here, a resolution or whatever we have to do until we get the money from the state to preserve it. Because I can't tell you the money's there now because it's not there right now, all right? But if there's some way we can do it to be able to protect it, to make sure we build a park, because I'm gonna build a park there anyway, even before the state buys it. All right, I just wanna make sure I get reimbursed with dollars and we're able to preserve it forever. But I can't tell you when that's gonna happen. I'm just gonna build a park because we own it. We're gonna build a park and we're gonna maintain it as county property. Okay?
Thank you.
And I have one more
Yes.
question. This is a private type community like the Cay Hovnanian Four Seasons. So they have their own clubhouse. Instead of them putting the money into building their own clubhouse, how about shifting the development and putting a community center there? So at least if we're suffering, we're getting something in return.
We already-
Is that on the?
Well, if the council remembers, we addressed that with Cay Hovnanian. And since that development is a development of 460 units, the people that would be afforded the opportunity to use the clubhouse are the residents that are there, not the people in the community. So if we were going to, as we brought up, putting a community center there, it would only be for the residents that live within the confines of the development. It's not a community center for the rest of Cedar Grove.
Is there anything
you know,
we can do to
we've
change
eared
that?
We've talked about that. We actually, if the council remembers, we negotiated them not being able to put a pool there because we wanted to make sure they took advantage of our pool.
Right.
So we've gone through a lot of these questions, and this is the end result of what we've come up with.
And they maintain those roads internally as well, or is the town maintaining
No,
the
the
roads?
town would be responsible, as we are in many of the other developments throughout the town that are private. We do the maintenance, the snow removal, the rock salt, et cetera.
But no benefit of the community center? it's a shame, but thank you. We know you guys have our best interests in mind, and we'll all have to move forward. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to be heard? Mr. Emery?
Good evening, thank you. Ryan Emmerich, 23 Greendale Road. Not to beat the pilot question to death, but the question I have there is the people that will reside in the community, will they pay the same tax rate that I do?
Yeah.
Yeah, the pilot has nothing to do with the
Okay.
tax rate.
So what is the negotiation, 20 years, 30 years, what are you negotiating?
That's a decision that the council will make.
The term,
The term.
what'll happen at the end of the term?
Then the money, the tax money would go back to the way it is right now, where a pie structure, where the county would get 24%, the school would get theirs, and the town would get ours.
Thank you. You know, we wouldn't be here tonight if the county hadn't sold parcel 5.
County didn't sell parcel 5, sold parcel 1.
Both, whether, so it's all about money. So what I'd like to know is, how much money did the county get for parcel 5?
None. County
I thought it was sold.
County sold parcel 1 for $12.5 million. The county is still in litigation over the Brown parcel 5. Has not sold parcel 5.
Good, don't sell it. What, how you gonna, there's no value been placed on it?
There is a contract between the Improvement Authority and K. Hovnanian on parcel 5, this parcel. That's what the litigation's about.
How much is, it's another county entity, you know, we're shuffling money from the county to the ECIA, is that it?
Well, I hope you're wrong, because if you're wrong, if you're right, then K-Hub's gonna win that lawsuit. We've maintained that the Improvement Authority is a separate entity from the county. It's not controlled by the county.
Well, who owns the property?
The county. The contract is between the Improvement Authority and K. Hovnanian. The lawsuit is over whether or not K. Hovnanian can compel the sale from the county to the Improvement Authority.
Okay, it's getting murkier. Thank you, I
I was
guess.
hoping that was clearer.
No, it's not. And I'm looking for the dollar amount to say that, hey, we're taxpayers, and it's all about the money. So, you know, well, how much are, you know, we the taxpayers, you know,
Okay,
gonna get out of all
I can
this?
tell you this, that the contract price for parcel 5 is $22.5 million.
That's all, huh?
That's what it is.
Giving it away.
Anyone else wishing to be heard? Yes, Mr. Kubaris.
First, I just want to thank the residents. I'm doing the best I can.
Sir, can you just state your name and,
Oh,
we have to
all
speak
right.
to here.
Harry
The name-
Caburas, 41 The Glen.
Thank you.
All right, and I just wanted, real quick, thank the residents. I appreciate everything that you did. But I was correct when I was campaigning, when you said there was some misinformation. When I told everybody about the pilot program initially, it was 95% to the town, 5% to the county, and nothing to the school system. Now, wait, let me
First of all,
finish. You're
point-
now gonna put in some type of referendum so that schools do get the money. Resolution. But the point I'm saying was, I was correct at the time, right? You never came out and said, you said that you were gonna help the school system, but technically, you never, ever had to
Well, first
take
of all,
a...
I never had a conversation with you. So you're saying that I said or I heard. I didn't refer to you. I just said that the election season
Right.
generated a lot of misinformation.
I was the
So
only one
obviously,
that
if
was
you were the
talking
one that was
about
given the
the pilot
misinformation,
program.
I wasn't witness to it.
Right.
I don't know what was said.
Right. Well,
All I'm saying
it's apples
is
and
that-
oranges. I'm just saying was, I was correct in what I said, and I just wanted to stand on that particular thing.
Okay, I
All
wasn't
right,
a
so
witness to what
I'd
you
like
said.
I'd like to move on. Okay. There's the daycare center that's at the end, the property down. Is that building still usable? Can that building be used?
Mr. Emmerich thinks yes.
I'm-
I'm a
I'm-
building
may I- I'm
inspector.
asking you.
I think we have
Okay.
we've had people in
Okay.
it, so I was thinking.
Just a suggestion, maybe we could lease the building for $1 a year or something. Couldn't we use that as a community center? We also have enough room for parking, which we don't have at the library. I'm just making a suggestion. I don't want nothing built there, be honest. I'm just saying if I have to, maybe we could use that. That would be something that would be nice. you know?
Okay. I'd rather you just
I'm
address,
sorry.
the way our format is, you address me and we'll answer the
Okay.
question. I don't wanna have a lot of sidebar.
I understand.
Because it's late and I wanna make sure that everybody leaves here tonight being afforded an opportunity
Okay.
to speak.
And just one other thing, real short. one of the main reasons why I was doing this was I'm very concerned about the reservoir property. And I discussed this with Mr. DiTucci just for a few minutes a couple of weeks ago. There's nothing that says the property over at the reservoir cannot be built on if undue hardship is produced. So what I mean is that should they decide, which they're not going to probably, put the tanks there or UV sterilization and whatever other necessary other stuff like that, the argument is the North can say, we don't need the reservoir, and they could technically build on that property. How do we prevent what's happening at the Hilltop property happening down at the reservoir? We have the property from Bowden down to up to Ridge, right? And then you have the reservoir itself. They drain the water, knock the wall down, and that property can be built on. And a lot of residents brought that up in conversation. I said, I believe it's going to be many, many years before even something like that would be considered. But to prevent that from happening, they're going to look at the Hilltop, whatever we do there, and use that as the template, because the builder's going to say, hey, I got a good deal. I could build on a reservoir property if it becomes available, right? And I could put the same type of stuff there. We won't be able to stop it. So for the future, we need to figure out something so we don't have to go through the same thing. My goal, and the only goal that I have, nothing political, was to keep that Hilltop property as much as parkland as possible for the residents, right? And keep the building down. I understand you're gonna build on it, right? But I want it to be smaller, and that was one of the main reasons why I put the binding referendum information forward, right? And I still believe, and I know a lot of residents still want it. We have almost all the signatures for it, what we need by law. So that's something we need to think of in the future, and I want to work with the council. I don't want to have this where we go back and forth, especially like last week with you, Mr. Tonella. I didn't want to go back and forth.
Wait a minute, look, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you
Yeah.
off, but here's my thing.
Okay.
We came here tonight to discuss the
This
K-Hop
is,
thing.
this is.
Well, you're talking about some discussion you had with him that you disagreed or whatever.
No, I was just saying that it was just my opinion last week when I was talking, the same thing as tonight, right? I didn't want to do, I didn't want to go back and forth,
So I'm not going back and forth, and I know you keep referring to me. I'm not going back and forth.
Right.
I'm just chairing a meeting. I have no personal animosity against anybody that's here. I have a decision to make. My only comments, which I'm very passionate about because my colleagues and I put hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours in this, probably more than anyone here, okay, over the years. And I don't like misinformation. If you or whoever had the misinformation would have come before the council and asked a question, it would have been clear. Many of the residents here have spoken to me over the weeks, over the months, about many of the issues. Many of them have come here. You're making this about you. It's not about you. It's about me as a council member and my colleagues affording an opportunity to the public for the facts.
I understand, but it appears that the misinformation that you're talking about tends to be directed toward me during the campaign. That's all I was saying.
Well, you weren't the only one in the campaign. Everybody was in a campaign. And campaign season, I've been in them.
Okay.
A lot of things get spewed. And if you remember 2 weeks ago when you were here, I was very clear.
Yes.
I said, when you ring a doorbell, and I've done many of them, you can't, in a matter of a few minutes, explain to someone to either vote yes or no on something because the issue is too broad.
And I agree with you on that. Okay.
So I said-
Most of the people that I talked to didn't even know what was going on. And I think it does attribute to that there's a lot of people out this time, and
I'm
the
glad they're
Nixels
here.
helped,
I'm glad that people are here. I think the council did a great job in communicating, and for whatever you've done to bring them out, I applaud you for it also. Because I'm glad they're here. Anyone else wishing to be heard? Yes, sir. So I'll go you first and then him second. I'm just trying to move the meeting along. Thank you.
Sam Paparato, 108 Holly Lane. Live in Four Seasons at Cedar Grove. And for those of you that may or may not know, there is litigation against KHAV for going into its fourth year over construction issues. We say it's all about money. 100% agree, and KHAV is all about money. You can see it in their construction, you can see it in what's going on. They are not negotiating in good faith, in my opinion at least. I'm not on the board, I'm not privy to it all, but certainly being part of it, an owner in there it's an issue. It's a big issue. It's a big issue not only for us as owners in there, it's an issue for this town. People are losing hundreds of thousands of dollars on their units. Hundreds of thousands, not tens of thousands. Okay, so what does that mean? It means your tax base is going down, right? So that's a financial implication to the town. It means the people selling are losing. Financial implication to the people. It means the whole value of the town goes down. Everybody's house is impacted because the value of the housing is going down. Now, what happens if they build? My opinion, they're not going to do any better job there with all the inspections, everything we're going to do. Not going to do any better job there. So what happens 5 years down the road? There's litigation over there. Brings the value down again. I just don't see this as a win-win for anybody, given the fact that, they did not stand behind their product. They agree that there's, problems in this thing with water penetration. They, from what I understand, readily admit that. But, they use subcontractors that have insurance where they knew the insurance wasn't going to cover it. But they still use those subcontractors. I'm speechless in terms of the financial ramifications of what we're doing here.
I'm sorry to hear that, and I've heard many war stories like your own from both people inside Cedar Grove and out of Cedar Grove, including people that I know within your development. It is a terrible, terrible situation. Understanding that, as well as understanding that we as a township don't have the rights to ownership of the land. That contract was done and is being done between an entity or Essex County and them. The only thing before us is to make a decision on where we're at. And my heart goes out to people like yourself who work and now are gonna lose what you have as a result of shoddy operations. Okay? I don't know what more I can say because the decision that we may or may not make can't be based on their construction. And I know that's a pill for you to swallow. We've had the same discussion 2 years ago with people from Clifton that came before us. And our attorney was very direct in explaining to us that if and when we may make a decision on this, we have to stick to the parameters of what we're approving.
And I can certainly appreciate that and actually understand that, but I just want everybody to know there are real financial implications to this, I think, to every homeowner here. Because again, I think it drives the value down within the town, not only within the community that I live in or the potential community being built. Just an opinion. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but.
I do appreciate that.
And just one other minor comment, we have been trying to get a trial date, I understand, and we can't get a trial date because there are not enough judges, and there are 3 judges available, have 99 active cases, so we're probably looking at years before we can get a trial date. So if we actually went into litigation with them, we're probably looking 20 years out because we can't get a judge. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Margiotta?
Hi, everybody. Todd Margiotta, 14 Devonshire Road South. I'd like to thank the council for the information presented tonight and for allowing us to attend and for being so warm here. But, we receive a lot of conflicting information up until this point. You read one thing in the papers, you see a different message on social media, you have different conversations on the street. So this was, personally, is very informative for me to kind of get the clear answer on a lot of the hot topics. I want to echo what was said a couple speakers ago. No one wants this to happen. I don't think anyone wants to see this happen. I could think of 1,000 other things that I'd like to to see up on that hilltop, but the fact of the matter is it's going to be developed whether we like it or not. At least that's what I'm hearing from tonight. And we have an opportunity now to be a participant in what happens with our town. And one of the things that keeps kind of bouncing around in my head is, well, do we want to participate in this? Or do we want to fight it and let Hovnanian go to court and have some judge who doesn't live here, who has no vested interest in our town and what we're all about, decide not what's best for Cedar Grove, but what Hovnanian legally can do on this property? And my fear is the devil we know may be better than the devil we don't know. So I, for one, I support the project. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Rita Dyer, 116 Myrtle Ave. Speaking of devil, I think it's a shame that we're dealing with the devil here, but that's besides the point. I have a question about the pilot program. Earlier, I heard tonight, that the average taxes that are going to be paid are about $9,500 per unit. And I can't quite remember exactly who said that, but and the pilot program, what I heard at previous meetings was that the taxes will then be frozen and that those taxes will not be increased for the pilot period.
No.
No, that's wrong?
The pilot, as I had explained earlier, 95% of the revenue would come to the
Right.
township, 5% would go to the county.
Right.
My suggestion, and hopefully my colleagues would work together on this, would be to earmark the percentage of money for the Board of Education and put it into a resolution so that that money is consistently paid each year for the length of the pilot.
Right, and I understand that, but I thought that I heard it at a meeting back in January where they said that the taxes on these units would be frozen for a period of
The
time,
taxes
would not
would-
be allowed to be increased during the
No.
pilot
That's not true.
period.
Maybe,
Good.
now, I don't know who said it, and I don't know the whole reason for them saying it. What I will say to you, though, is everything that we're talking about here tonight is the true facts and the truth of everything that's taken place. Not that we haven't
Right,
given you the
no, I
truth, but
understand.
I think you need to erase the stuff in the rumors.
Okay, because it was my understanding that the taxes on these 460 units were gonna be frozen for a period of time, and,
No.
okay. So these taxes will be increased annually the same way our taxes are increased annually. It's just how they're allocated.
Yes.
Okay. I just have to say, I understand we're gonna have to do something, but I don't want anything. None of us do, I know that, but I live on Myrtle Avenue. It's a speed raceway right now, so, it's just gonna increase greatly. So I'm not happy about that. I also think that it's a little bit of a slippery slope that we're taking on right now. Whatever we do here is gonna happen on some other parcels in town that may come up for sale. Large parcels. One was just spoken about. There's another I know that has gone, in front of the boards before, has not been sold yet, but, so it's just a real concern for me.
And I sympathize with you, and I do thank you for coming. And unfortunately, if the
I
township
know.
doesn't own the land
I know,
and a developer wants to come in,
I know. And I'm
it's a
very
challenge.
happy I'm not sitting behind there, because this is an awfully difficult decision to make. So, just know that, we know what a difficult time it is. that
Thank you
guys
so
are
much.
going through.
I
So,
appreciate you coming.
Okay, and Mr. O'Toole, thank you for your service, and you're gonna be missed greatly.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. While you're coming to the podium, could I see a show of hands of how many other people would like to be heard tonight? Okay, thank you.
Hi, Carl Mangles, 15 Brisk Court. I applaud the council for coming up with this compromise. I think it's a good deal for the town. I just have one question. When they take, if this goes through and you vote for it, if they take possession of that piece of property, what assurances do we have that the deal that you've struck will hold and they won't come before the zoning board to change the terms of the deal.
Mr. Scrivo, would you be able to,
Sure, Deputy Mayor, through you, there'd be two things that would control that. The first would be the designation in the redevelopment area. The second would be an actual contract between the township and K. Hovnanian, which would be a redevelopment agreement. So they'd be both bound by the ordinance overlay that would exist, as well as a contractual provision that they would have their same rights to break any contract they would, which is, under certain factors that none of which I could think would be present here, particularly since they bargained for this. So there'd be two, in answer to your question, there's really two components to that.
thank you. Anyone else wishing to be heard? Yes, Mrs. Spagnardi?
Isabel Spagnardi, 511 Holly Lane. I would like to thank the council for all the work they did these past years, coming up to this plan. And Mr. O'Toole, good luck to you on any new adventure that you care to take. I live in Four Seasons at Cedar Grove. We have a lot of problems there. I'm sure Sam said some of them. My concern is, how is he allowed to still build in the state of New Jersey? I don't get it. He has so many litigations against him. And I think what it is that KHOV is the mother, the bank. He forms LLCs, okay, limited corporations. As soon as that project is done, he's gone. You have to sue him, you have to go through all kinds of, oh God. Just to take, for instance, our complex. We had to, go into arbitration with him. So we had to take, he had 35 to 45 subcontractors. The one judge said, how many houses did he build? He couldn't get over how many subcontractors we had to go and get depositions from. And the insurance, he has a certain part of insurance. But then, the other insured, you have to go with each subcontract's insurance. So you're dealing with a lot of problems with him. All I can say is, and I know John was up there watching when they were building. I mean, John's only one person. I mean, KHOV has a rule. Any of his employees do not go on the roof because of the liability. So he has all these people that do not speak English framing. I don't know what they're doing. I mean, all I can say is, I know you can't stop this. I know it has to go forward. But you've got to be careful with him. Because he will try to sneak around any position he can do and try to get away with it. Say, for instance, say he buys windows, for instance. We have windows in Four Seasons that were constructed to go with wood framing or, say, vinyl siding. That's what he put in there. And we have stucco. They're all leaking. So,
Well, I'm sorry for what you're going through. I know we've spoken about it several times
I've told
on
you
the
many
phone.
times, yep.
I know that the gentleman that spoke before you, your fellow residents,
Mhm.
it's a shame.
Yeah. And Sam was right about the judges. All the judges are retiring because they didn't want their pension cut. So they're all retiring. There's no judges.
Do you want to be a judge?
You want to be a judge? There's your opportunity, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs.
Thank you.
Spignardi.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I just want to thank council for all the years of dedication. Sorry.
Your name and address, please?
Sure, I apologize. My name is John Martinelli.
Just lift this
Sure, you
toward
bet.
Thank you so much.
No problem. My name is John Martinelli. I reside at 30 Hillside Avenue. I'm sorry. My name is John Martinelli. I reside at 30 Hillside Avenue. I'm really under the weather, and I apologize, but I want to take time to congratulate Mr. O'Toole for all his years of dedication to people of Cedar Grove. Definitely appreciate the work. And I also want to thank the members of council, because I know it's not an easy task to go through this all these years and dealing with all the different, scenarios. I just have a couple of questions. A lot of people here, to be honest, if you bear with me, I have just a couple of questions, because a lot of these questions that I wanted to ask council were already answered, so I have to just pass through, but I won't take much of your time.
Okay.
In reference to the, I just want to see the tax base, okay? For the 460 townhomes, with the exception of 90 affordable houses, what's the price or the range that these townhomes are going for? Do you have that? And I asked you last time, Mr. Tucci, I know you're going to look into it, about the 90 affordable homes. What is the price for those?
Well, Joe, if I could?
Yes, go ahead.
The price range on the smallest unit, the traditional unit, I believe they're 1 and 2 bedroom, is going to be between $400 and $550.
Okay.
All right. The second size unit, I believe, well, the third unit, which is the master down, is going to be between $750,000 and $800,000. And then there's a middle unit that's going to be priced between $500,000 and $700,000. So that's the ranges we're looking at: $400,000 to $550,000, $500,000 to $750,000, and then $700,000 to $850,000.
Gotcha. Thank you. How much for the affordable housing?
Well, the affordable housing units, again, are based on a state formula, and it's gonna be based on what the income level of the person that's applying. Whether, like Mr. Serenian said, whether they fall in the low category or whether they fall in the moderate category is gonna be the determining factor on how much they're gonna have to pay for the unit. So we really don't know. We would be lying to you if we put a number on it right now.
No.
We don't know, but it's a very complicated formula. I don't know if Mr. Serenian, you wanna expand upon that?
They price them differently for a 3, 2, and 1 bedroom unit, and they price them to be affordable to moderate, and they price them to be affordable to low. So, I'm guessing that the moderates, the wealthiest moderates, are maybe 150 to 180, and I don't know how far down the lows would go. I'd have to get the formulas and see how they play out, maybe 90 of them.
Thank you.
But, what you need to understand is those are the restricted prices.
Right.
But the value of the unit itself, in the absence of the restriction,
Right.
would be far greater than that.
I got you, sir. What about if somebody moves out? Does that stay affordable housing? Does that unit stay affordable housing and also at that price?
Yes,
Okay,
it's restricted for 30 years,
gotcha.
okay? So whoever's in the unit, when they sell to the next person, they have to sell at the restricted price. The laws have changed over time, if there's a foreclosure or not a foreclosure. In the past, a foreclosure extinguished the deed restriction, which was a problem from the municipality's perspective, because we lost the credit.
Gotcha.
But, but then that law changed, and now the foreclosure does not extinguish the deed restriction, but those laws change all the time, so it's, that's a nuance.
I got you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Mr. Martinelli,
Yes, sir.
I just want to expand upon what I told you.
You
Just want
bet.
to give you the correct terminology.
Sure.
The lowest unit would be the stacked townhome. I believe the second would be the traditional townhome, and the highest price would be the master down. That's the correct terminology as per the plan.
Thank you, sir. As a prudent buyer, or a prudent investor, I mean, of no disrespect to the people in affordable housing, because I grew up with meager means. Growing up, I grew up in Brooklyn. Why would I want to spend $500,000 to $700,000 for a unit and give that person, like I say, no disrespect, and want to live next to somebody with affordable housing? Wouldn't I worry about my property value? I mean, I'm just throwing it out there.
Developers do express concern with trying to sell a $700,000 unit next to a $100,000.
Right.
So, they try to integrate them. I'm not sure what the plan is to integrate them in this development, but it's an issue.
They are blended in.
Yeah.
They are blended.
Towns want them blended. Developers want to try to segregate them so they can get maximum dollars for the market units. But if that's part of this, good for you.
Another question I have, does it give Hovnanian a lower tax rate for the properties, since he's like It doesn't give him a low tax rate, he gets taxed same ratables as everybody else?
Same tax rate as everywhere.
Okay. Just one more. Thank you for your time. I'm looking at both proposals, and again, it's my opinion. I personally, I mean, as everybody else, nobody wants anything built here, neither does council. We all know that, we get it. But if I had a decision worrying about, as that gentleman said, that's the Board of Education, because that 90, for me, is seriously flawed. I don't see 90 children coming into us. I see much more than that. And what I feel is, I know Hovnanian wants to make the most at his money, but you know what? Honestly, I think it's all about the dollar, and it's all about what he does, but to all the people right here, it's all about the dollar with us, too. We're worried about the higher property taxes down the road, and we're also worried about, because of the shoddy craftsmanship, but we won't get into that, because I know you guys explained that already. I'm worried about my property value of my house. Because what happens is, this is a small-town community, and I get it that, you know, we have no decision on this. So if I had to make a proposal, I'd rather put the senior citizen center there, and which was first agreed upon, because I think there's not, that I'm sure, there's a limited amount of people here that rather have the other proposed. With the, I know we're giving up the park, I get it, but I feel with the senior citizen housing and the single-family homes, there'd be less of a tax burden on our community. That's my opinion.
That's true.
Okay? And like I say, this small town feel, sir, I know it's gonna change. I moved here for that small town feel. And with this changing, I seriously worry about the property values. Because if one goes up, the other's gotta go down. If your property taxes go up, the value of your house, what you could sell, the market price, I feel, goes down. One has to do with the other. And to be honest with you, like that gentleman said about rather have built nothing there, I'd rather go to court. And like I said, this is only my opinion, I'm not speaking for everybody else. I'd rather go to court and fight this guy and get keep the existing, instead of the proposed, keep the current. I know we're going to be doing without the park, I get it, but we have been without the park anyway. And the park that we're getting, no disrespect, I mean, it's a buffer. I really feel it's a buffer. And again, my opinion. And I just want to thank you again for hearing me out. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to be heard? Yes, sir.
James Hudson, 47 West Bradford. I've lived in this town over 45 years, and I've had the pleasure over the years of viewing all of the wild animals up on the hilltop, both the upper and the lower portion. Hawks, wild turkey, countless deer. I mean, this is an environmentally sensitive parcel of land. It's a self-contained habitat. And what I would like to see happen is a buyback, like a Green Acres buyback, maybe through our taxes, you know, give us a slight assessment to pay for a Green Acres buyback. We'll put, you know, the people of the town will put up a certain portion, or the people of the state, and in return, it'll be matched by Green Acres dollars. Another option is to appeal to like the Nature Conservancy, because I have to tell you, I'm not an expert on birds, but in the past, well, I'd say 4 to 5 years, like I'm only 2 blocks from the proposed development, I've seen hawks circling over my house, which the only time I've ever seen hawks is in like nature films, circling like 20, 25 feet above my house and down below, several doors down. And you know, hawks are endangered just like bald eagles. You don't see hawks just anywhere. I mean, you can't go to Broad Street in Newark and see a hawk. So hawks, wild turkey, countless deer. I mean, you have a self-contained ecosystem here. I think it's just too environmentally sensitive to develop. And the way I would go, I would like to see anyone here, even the members of the council, the town doesn't have to get officially involved. Just put a brief videotape together and email it to either the Interior Department or the Nature Conservancy, maybe the Sierra Club. get these people involved, and there's another organization, Lands in the Public Trust. And because, this is a treasure, it's just the people in this county who really know about this land. I've lived here over 45 years. I've had the pleasure of seeing it every day. But I want to see it preserved for future generations. I don't want to, Hovnanian is like the bully in 5th grade who threatens to beat you up after school unless you give him a couple of bucks for candy money. I don't want to see us fall prey to a big corporation like that. So, the Hawks are out there. I see them about every week, and I live on West Bradford. I've seen them over my house, above neighbors' houses, and they're there. And they're not going away until Hovnanian comes with his bulldozers. Then they'll be gone for good. So, and I'd like to salute you, Mr. O'Toole, for your years of service to this town.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Kevin McVeigh, 19 Briarwood Terrace. First of all, I'd like to thank the council and Kathy Stutz and everyone here for all their hard work. Just one question, and this is addressed to you, Tom, and it's been talked about and everything. I'd just like it to be clarified. What's your gut or your estimate when, if we don't move today, the developer files the builder remedy lawsuit? How long would it take for a court to make a decision? Your gut. I'm not going to hold you to it.
Deputy Mayor, I think you're off a significant period of time. I think because what we don't know, the fact that we don't know, because we're going to be in uncharted waters, is what's going to happen in the rest of the state. You're going to have flooded litigation. Of course, in Cedar Grove, we'd be limited to the Essex County towns that lawsuits would be filed in. But I think it would be a significant period of time. You're probably talking years.
5, 6?
No, I don't think that much, but I think 2 to 3 for sure. Until something else happens.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Anyone else wishing to be heard? Seeing none, I close that portion of the meeting. I do want to thank everyone for their patience, their respect, and more importantly, for being here tonight. I think that you could hear from the presentation from start to finish. This is not a task that we really were elected purposely to make. It's a decision that comes with the territory. Today is no different than maybe other decisions, but the difference is the decision we're making tonight affects our township in such a different way. It's not voting for an open space trust referendum. It's not earmarking funding to buy a new fire truck. It's not deciding if we should bond or redo our pool. We're talking about the known versus the unknown. And I think that that's been demonstrated tonight very repeatedly. And I didn't plan to run for council and serve you to sit here and struggle and stress and have sleepless nights and have heated debates and have endless hours of negotiations with people that I just never really trusted. And I pointed out so many different inequities with the presentation, including the fact that when we first started this, they were talking about parcel 5 being 100 acres, and in actuality, it was 90.228 acres. But I think that as many of you were kind enough to express when you came to the podium, you understand the dilemma that we have. And it's a challenge. And I realize that when each of you leave here tonight, you're gonna have people that are, I don't even wanna use the word satisfied, but maybe understanding, and you're gonna have people that are totally disgusted. And I sympathize with both sides. All I can tell you is that it's not an easy decision. and spending so many years that you've afforded me to be on the council to wrestle with volunteering my time to sit around a table and struggle. I thank you for that, because in the end, that's the decision that each of us have to make. And I'm sure that even though I'm taking the words, some of the words are probably being pulled out of some of my fellow council members' mouths because they feel the same way. You know, we went through a period of time where we thought that this would never come to fruition. We struggled, kicked the can, a lot of misinformation, fought, argued, litigated, spent your money litigating. It's a tough decision. But the mayor asked me to run this portion of the meeting, so the next thing on the agenda, unless my council members want to say something, is to call for the introduction of the ordinance. Does anyone on the council want to say anything before?
No, adoption.
Adoption. Does anybody want to say anything?
I'll just keep it short, Deputy Mayor. I believe it was Mr. Vargo said it best. I'm not a gambler, neither am I. And Mr. Jager said, please do what's best for Cedar Grove. And when I'm up here, that's what I base my decision on, what's best for the town. I live here like you. I got 3 small kids. I want them to grow up and stay in town, so I don't have to travel far to visit them one day. And I know it's gonna have an impact. It absolutely will. When you add 8% to your population, it will. It's not a decision I wanna make. Okay, I'd rather be out there with you and saying, don't do this. But based on what I know, based on the information I have, not just from Mr. Scrivo, one of the preeminent government attorneys in the state, he wrote the book on it, not just from Mr. Serenian, the leading affordable housing attorney in the state, but our town planner, our town engineer, Mr. Tucci. I have to take all that information into consideration when I make my decision. And the thing is, it's not even a divided opinion amongst the 5 of them. It's pretty unanimous, where they say, you sort of have to take this. You may not like to swallow it, but it's the best of a bad situation. I like the one comment, better to deal with the devil that you know than with the devil that you don't know. And it's true, only because I'd love to say, fight it. You know, let's not build anything there. I don't want more traffic. I live off Fairview Avenue. I don't want more kids in the schools. My kids go to school here. But what will happen if we vote no? What will happen if we decide, we tell Mr. Scrivo, Mr. Serenian, fight this? Okay, never mind the legal fees, put that aside. But what if 3-4 years from now a judge says 850 units, sounds like a reasonable number. KOB's asking for 1,500, you guys were gonna talk 460, I'll go in the middle. And 250 affordable units. What do we do then? See, that's the unknown. And when you say you're not a gambler, me either. I can't gamble with the township's future on this issue. And when I have the professionals that we pay and that we retained telling us, all guiding us in the same direction, look, let's be honest. Mr. Scrivo, Mr. Serenian, they're paid lawyers. If we told them litigate it, we're like, all right, we got 4 years of fees. You could probably make a couple $100,000 each if we fight this with appeals and everything. But they're being honest enough because they've worked with us, and Mr. Scrivo's been here a long time. They're honest enough to tell us, look, I can make money litigating this, but it's not in the township's best interest, okay? And it's between a rock and a hard place. It's handcuffs, whatever you want to call it, the way it's been. You got to make the best of a bad situation, and you have to control your own destiny, so to speak. If anyone's ever been involved in a lawsuit out there, whether it was a car accident case or divorce, whatever it may be, 98% of you were forced, I use the word forced, to settle at some point. Either because the litigation expenses were getting too high, or because you didn't want to take the risk of what could happen if you left it in a judge's hands. And sitting up here, I don't want to take that risk. I really don't. And the other thing is, we have risk. If we didn't have risk, we wouldn't be here. We'd be telling Mr. Scrivo and Mr. Serenian, tell KHOP to go, you know where. We'll litigate it. But we have risk. That's the problem. And when you have risk, you negotiate the best you can, you come up with a final proposal, and you deal with it. Again, it's not a decision I want to make, it's a decision I have to make. I recall when, during the budget crisis about 4 or 5 years ago, when the state cut off all aid to the municipalities. We had to make a terribly difficult decision here. We had to lay off 3 police officers. You're taking someone's paycheck. It was a horrible decision to make, but we had no other options at that point, and we made it. Luckily, we were able to hire them back, but it was not a popular decision. It was not an easy decision, and I didn't want to make it, but I had to because, again, I was voting in what's in the best interest of the township. So the other thing that a settlement does is you eliminate not only the uncertainty, but other lawsuits. So you're eliminating that risk, and it's better to know what you have tomorrow than not know what you have tomorrow. That's my interpretation of it. I'm with you on all the issues you raised. They were excellent questions. They were questions that we raised during this whole process, and you got to make the best of a bad situation. So I hope you all understand that. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to? Yes.
Yeah, I do, and I don't want to belabor the issue, because we've been talking about this for a while tonight, and I agree with everything my council members have said. We've been talking about this for years, and I'm listening to the questions that people have reached out on, social media about tonight. I mean, Mr. Cherry, as she had mentioned before, can you get us this, can you get us that? I can appreciate all that. We've asked. When you're looking at your attorney and he's telling you, you can't get any more, that's it. You think we wanted 460 units? I'm like anybody else, none of us wanted any units. We're sitting in those negotiations saying, 460 units, oh my God. Can we get under 400? Can we get this? And when council's telling us, no, this is it. This is the best you're gonna get. It's the best of a worst case situation. That's why we're here tonight. That's why we brought it here tonight. Because it's the best of a worst case situation. Like we said at our other meeting, I don't wanna see anything up there either. I want it all green. I want it just like everybody else. But we don't have control over that. And like one of the other members said, you gotta control your situation here. I'm not a gambler. I think that was a great comment tonight. And it took me a long time to get to this point tonight where, I got his stomach making this vote, which I don't wanna make, but I have to make it. And it's not an easy decision, but we gotta do it. I can't sit here and say, well, we're not gonna get a judge for 5 years, 6 years. Well, let's litigate this, let's fight it. I'd fight it tomorrow if my attorneys told me we had a chance. They can't tell you that we prevail, but if we had a chance. You heard it from both of our attorneys tonight. Mr. Serenian saying that Kovnanian, all about business, all about money, they're gonna cloak themselves around affordable housing. 860 units, I couldn't look at you in the face in 5 years from now if I saw 860 units up there. What could I do? Say, gee, I should have done something differently. I'm not gonna gamble like that. I'd be irresponsible on my part to do that. It's a tough decision, we have to make it. That's what we're here for tonight.
Any other comments?
Yes.
All right. Yes, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Thank you. I can only echo the sentiments of my fellow councilmen. One of the best things about living in Cedar Grove my whole life is I lived adjacent to the Hilltop Center, and I still do. Back then, when I was a child, the hospital grounds were basically a city within itself. It had its own fire department, its own police department. It consisted of about 3,000 people. And then the county decided to close it down. Back in the late 70s, then the county executive, Peter Shapiro, came up with the idea of changing the old sanitarium, which is the upper part of the Hilltop, into a hotel, conference center, and office complex. That went nowhere. And for years, Cedar Grove got payments from the county in lieu of taxes. Back in the 70s, the county stopped it. So then came the mid-90s when Hovnanian came along. And we've been wrestling with this for 20 years now. So we've worked hard on this. We're trying to do what's best for Cedar Grove. Because I've lived here all my life, and I plan they'll take me out feet first. So I want to thank everybody for being here tonight, for expressing your opinions, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. with that said, we come to the portion of the meeting where we're going to recognize item 3A on the agenda, and that is to consider adoption of pending ordinance 15-780, addendum 1 to the Cedar Grove redevelopment plan, Hilltop property.
I'll make a motion to, oh, sorry. Have to open it up.
Open to the public?
We just
We did that.
That's what we've been doing.
did the public.
Just want to make
Just the
sure.
introduction.
Yeah,
No.
just
I mean,
the adoption.
I move for the adoption of, it should be written down.
Forgot I had to read it, I'm sorry. Mayor, I move for the adoption of pending ordinance number 15-780 to be published in the Verona Cedar Grove Times as a passed ordinance to take effect as prescribed by law.
Is there a second?
Second, Mayor.
Any discussion from the council? Hearing none, roll call.
Councilman O'Toole?
Yes, I'm gonna have to abstain for the reason that I spoke last time, because I missed 3 main public meetings, 2 planning board meetings, which I'm a member of, due to a severe accident I had, and I was out of commission for two months. Still have some minor problems with it. And since I didn't get all the information at that time, I'm gonna abstain.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Councilman Zunic?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Chisolo?
Yes.
Mayor Longo?
Yes.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming this evening. I truly appreciated everybody's effort, and more importantly, sitting here with the heat, sweltering heat. As a council member, we're always available to answer any questions, and I hope that you will continue to participate in the meetings and interact with me. Thank you very much.
Planning board. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.